Okay. Gary, are you okay with me sharing the agenda via my screen at times?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can take over the screen at times. It's just I won't be able to see people hands up along the way. So we can see how that goes.
Okay.
So it can sort of be back and forth, I guess, because all those documents are available, I guess, or people can screen capture them if they want.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I just noticed on my phone that it is 1 o'clock, and I'd like to call the Committee of Whole for Monday, December 7th, 2020. And here as a Zoom that we are doing this. And just our Committee of the Whole, to let people know, it's really where all the moving parts of our city come together. We have our managers and our elected officials all together into one meeting. So it's a very important meetings that we have on a monthly basis. So I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Tooley, seconder? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Tooley.
I'll just make the motion to approve the Monday, December 7th, 2020 Committee of the Whole agenda as presented.
Seconder for that? Councillor Peterson? Any more additions? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we will move down to the protective services. And again, just for motions again, we don't have, there are more motions, procedural motions than we have directive motions for meetings like this. Any directive motions would be on Monday next week at our open council meeting. So just so when people know, we have a few procedural motions that will happen throughout, but that'll be it. The rest will be moved to Monday's meeting next week when it's a regular meeting of council. Okay, so we will move down to protective services, and we'll start with Acting Staff Sergeant Dion Marquis.
Muted.
Oh, you're muted, Dion.
Oh, it's on the... Dion, you guys are on the phone in there, so you just have to touch *6 on the phone and it'll unmute the phone.
Hello? Can everybody hear me now?
There we go.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're not here in a formal capacity. We were asked to come and just answer a few other questions that you guys may have. In January, we will present our stats as we regularly do, alternatively with Martinsville and Warman. I do know that one of the questions you guys did ask was what our call volumes are. And just simply by the file numbers and I'll report them if you wish to document them. For Warman Municipality in 2019, we had 1,543 files. In 2020 to date, we've had 1,411. Martinsville Municipality, in 2019, we had 1,733 files. In 2020, we had 1,379 files. In regards to our rural area, In 2019, we had 8,578 files. And in 2020, up to this date, we had 6,363 files. It is important to note our rural location also includes our traffic services files in those areas as well. And we are in the middle of trying to find a way that we can get those stats specifically to what we're handling. Other than that, as an interim report, I can say everything's fairly status quo. Nothing has changed than what I reported to at the Police Advisory Committee prior to the elections. Our staffing is fluctuating, but we are waiting for a couple of transfers to come in, and we're holding a few transfers back until it's what we would call a door-to-door move. So in other words, one individual moves and the other one arrives right behind it. In regards to the new staff sergeant or your permanent staff sergeant, that will be coming. His house is for sale, so we're pending. We're still in that area in Yorkton for it to sell. Until then, I will remain here as I have been for the last 17 months. And other than that, that's all I really have for you, pending any questions that you guys may have.
Questions?
Hi, Sergeant Marquis. I'm just wondering about staff retention. Are officers staying here in Warman and wanting to stay, other than seeking specialized training and different opportunities that we don't offer here?
This is Martinsville and Warman is always a lucrative spot to come to for family life, of course, being so close to the city, and Warman and Martinsville. We don't have a problem getting people here, but for their own career diversity, there's a shelf life on how long we want to be at a position. And depending in what area they're looking to, for their skill development to go into, whether it be a plainclothes position or specialty units, and that could be anywhere across the country. So looking at my team, yes, we have quite diversity on where people are going. And it's usually at the end of the day, it becomes a balance over what they want in their career versus their family life. I don't have anybody complaining that they don't want to be here.
Okay, other questions? Councillor Seed?
Staff Sergeant Marquis, just wondering, is it reasonable, and first of all, I appreciate you being here because I know you weren't scheduled to be. Is it reasonable, you think, that come January, you would be able to divulge a little bit more or get into the numbers a little bit more versus the municipal and rural and where they're being deployed on a, as a monthly average?
I could. I would need to know specifically what you're looking for, and I could tell you if I'm able to cultivate that for you.
Okay, so just to kind of the Reader's Digest version of it, the interest level that I have here is that with the funding that City of Warman is paying for municipal members, specifically what I'm interested in is to learn where's the majority of their time being spent. So are the municipal members attending to calls just in Warman? Obviously, we know that's not true. Are they spending 50% of their time in Martinsville? Are they spending, 10% of their time in rural? And I know that there's some offset there as well that we've discussed with rural members also being in Warman. Those are some of the stats that I'm looking for, is just to better understand where the financial payments that we're making are being utilized.
Well, I can rest assured that all the financial payments that the City of Warman is making, the members are in Warman, and if they are not, because it's going to be hard for us to give you stats, or extremely difficult for us to give you stats unless we run 3 different business lines. As one big business line, Warman's getting much more than what they're paying for. We're definitely, the 9 members that you do have are being exceeded with members in Warman. Yes, give or take, for half an hour they might be outside of the area, but we do have the rural that comes in. So we have one school resource person. He's in Warman 100% of the time. So I guess what I'm saying is it'll be extremely difficult for me to break down exactly where every member is, but you can be rest assured that you're getting your full allotment within the city of Warman, as is Martinsville. If not, additional members at no cost to you from our rural side of the business.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Johnson?
Hi, just one more question. How are the officers doing with COVID and their mental health and staying healthy and happy with the situation we have with the pandemic?
As a unit, we're doing pretty good. We've had a couple of outbreaks even within our own ranks within the both of our offices. We have dealt with that, and service delivery hasn't been affected. We ensure, and the nice thing is with the 24-hour policing, as we run our operation, it's beneficial to all the members. They'll have 5 days on, 5 days off, and they get their rest time and their downtime with that to rejuvenate with their mental health side and take on activities and what they choose outside of the work atmosphere. And again, I'll stress that's where it's nice having the 24-hour policing. If we were running Warman on a detachment of just 9 members, which the city pays for, 4 of them would work on a Friday and 2 would be off. So it would decrease your patrols substantially. And then, of course, with that type of style of policing, and we have it in other places in the province, it becomes an extreme challenge to get the R&R that's somewhat required.
Other questions? Councillor Seed?
One more quick one here, Dion, and it's not, I don't expect you to have this answer in front of you, so I want to be fair to you on this. Something I noticed that's further down in a report was indicating that policing fines in Warman this year versus last year are down up to 60%. I would like to see that come January when you do your report. I would like to see the comparison of the years to find out exactly how much we're down or up, and then again some thoughts on why that might be. Like, I'm sure that COVID has a whole bunch to do with it. Don't get me wrong. Just looking at those stats are surprising to me. Because I know that there's, you guys are out there and there's lots going on, but to see a reduction indicated in this report of being 60% down was surprising to me. So I'm just hopeful that come January we can have a little bit of a comparison of year to year, if you could, please.
What are you looking, again, the fine values or the revenue income generated by fines?
Yeah,
that's correct.
It's from the financial reports.
Okay, I won't. That would have to be internal. We don't produce that, as I'm not aware. I believe you get 75% as a municipal contract of any fines that are written within the city limits. If you're looking at the revenue aspect of it, that's also going to include what tickets or summary offense information that Corman Park is writing, your traffic units are writing. It's not going to be condensed just on us alone. If you want those revenues going higher, and am I assuming correctly that council is asking us to step up our enforcement within the community?
Sorry, my underlying direction behind it is just to do a comparison. I'm not specifically saying that more tickets need to be written for this or that or anything. I was just looking at the financial reports to see not even the monetary value, but just that it's down, according to this report, 60%. I would be curious to see, just again, in your numbers, how many tickets have been written. And again, I understand, I don't care whether it's a $100 ticket or $200 ticket, that's inconsequential. What I was just questioning is that, does the correlation between a 60% reduction also equate to a 60% reduction in tickets issued?
Not necessarily.
Right.
It all depends what we're fining individuals for. If they're issued one public health order violation, that would up the numbers that you're looking at. So the correlation there would not be the same. We can run the numbers specifically on how many complaints we've had and how many number of SOTIs we've issued, but I won't be able to put a financial number to that.
No, and I'm okay with that. I'm not asking for the financial number, more just referring to the amount of infractions that have been cited.
So how many how many tickets we've issued, and are you looking for how many tickets we've issued to the city of Warman specifically, or a location, or?
Within the city of Warman, if that's possible, Dion, and if it's not realistic, then just as whatever the comparison is for the years previous, I'm just looking at a year-to-year comparison.
And it would be the
Okay,
city
we'll
of Warman. Yeah, just because that would be the only part that would go to our revenue. Other questions? Just a comment. I think going back to Marshall's earlier question, I think a simple comparison to sort of look at value might be, and I'm a math guy, so I'm just looking at how many people, 9 out of how many total officers we have. Does that equal the same amount of files compared to the total amount of files? And so I think that comparison could be a fairly simple one, even from the numbers you gave, like just from, I just don't have those in front of me, or I just figured it out myself. So it's just how many officers? We have 9 out of the total number of officers. Martinsville has their amount over the total number of officers, and the rural has their amount over the total number of officers. And then does that sort of equate to the number of files in each one of those areas? And I agree that probably when we look at that, the cities will come out of the files are ahead of where the numbers are. But I guess data talks, right?
If I can just get some clarification from Councillor Seed. So is it the city's financial statement that you're looking at being 60% down, or report?
Which is Appendix D1.
It's the report that Amanda has, a finance, showing that the difference being from what we got last year to this year, showing, and that's where I read it too. So I know where he's getting it from.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that because, and I'll defer to Amanda as well, but I know that sometimes billing, also like end of year billing, we only get, they only provide us revenue every so often, so it may not be included in that part of the financial report, but the end of the year report may show a different picture. Amanda, do you have?
I'm fine with that if that's what it shows, Bob. Just looking for, it's a drastic number change, and I'm just looking for some rationale behind it.
Amanda, do you have anything to add with this one?
Yeah, I think it is possible that it could catch up at year end for Q2 and Q3. It was down significantly in comparison to prior years, but it doesn't necessarily indicate that year end won't catch up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, that can be looked at for sure, but anything else? Okay, thank you, Staff Sergeant Markey. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too.
We'll move down to our fire chief, Chief Austin.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Thumbs up are always a good thing. Well, yeah, basically my report for October. During the election, we had 51 calls, and then in November, we followed that up with 39. It has been fairly busy. We are noticing a lot more people with sick or flu-like symptoms inside Warman than what we're traditionally used to. So it has been pretty busy that way. But all in all, I think we're fighting a good fight from the front line, and we're keeping our people safe and keeping them from taking anything home to their families, which I think is the the biggest thing that we can focus on right now, helping people, but making sure that we don't compromise ourselves or our ability to respond to emergencies kind of takes priority there. I did put a note on my report about our water tender in Montreal. It does have a completion date of December 16th, which is a little bit behind schedule from where it was. It's my understanding that the manufacturer didn't have many delays, believe it or not, in Montreal with COVID, but they get all of their components from the United States, and a lot of those factories shut down and they just couldn't get the parts. So that's where we're at. We're still projecting that they'll be done December 16th. And as I said in my report, we're not planning on sending anybody to Montreal to do the pre-truck delivery. And I gave my reasoning kind of on the report. But at the end of the day, we'll still do a virtual walkthrough, much like this meeting, ask all our questions, see what we need to see. And hopefully before hopefully for the new year, and maybe underneath the Christmas tree, we'll end up with a new fire apparatus. So any questions for me?
Okay, questions? Councillor Seed.
First of all, Russ, I think you're going to need a bigger Christmas tree if you're going to put that truck under it. But I just wanted to check right now. I know that with a lot of the activity around COVID and the precautions you guys are taking, first of all, it's amazing. And I know with the volume of calls that you guys are doing, I just wanted to make sure, because you alluded to the fact that the members of your fire rescue team are taking advantage of the mental health services that are available to them. In your opinion, is the availability and the quality of the mental health services available to you guys right now sufficient for what you experience right now? And do you foresee in the next, say, couple of months that you have adequate support that way? Like, do you guys need anything else with relation to ensuring that we're absolutely doing the hot washes and making sure that these guys are 100% taken care of?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Seed. I know that's the mental health piece is close to your heart as well as mine. Right now, the way that it works right now is we have a kind of a multi-pronged approach. Because our firefighters aren't considered employees, we do have council approved independent mental health counseling and a mental health program for our firefighters during the year here. So that's one that the contract services actually run through Saskatoon. It's and they're super to work with. They you can call 24/7, 365, and you can do it over the phone. You can go into Saskatoon and do it in person. And it's not just for our fire members, but for their families too, because I know a lot of our significant others are feeling the pinch as well, because they don't know exactly what's happening when their loved one goes away and serves their community. So and you know, they're using it as well. So we do have that, and I think it's a huge asset, and we know it's being used. So that's a really good thing. Hopefully we can get, not just in Warman, but in the fire service in general, we can get to that place where people consider their mental health just as important as their physical health. And when you have to go in and, you know, every once in a while, get it up on the hoist and see what you need to do and do that preventative maintenance. On top of that, if there is a serious incident, which is a CISM or a CISD event, we do fall under workman's compensation. So actually workman's compensation recommends that if there is a traumatic event that triggers counseling, they would like a phone call to open a file, even if they just get something on the record that, yeah, there was a serious incident, this is what it was, but the firefighter doesn't think they need continued counseling, and then 5 years from now something rears up mental health wise, at least they can track it back to the service that they had when they were a volunteer firefighter. So workman's comp's come a long way. There was a time there where workman's comp wasn't interested in helping volunteer firefighters at all, but they've really changed the way they look at it. And so if we don't have our own policy, which does, or our own mental health services there, which do a bang up job, we do have the WCB fallback. So and then of course we do the hot washes. We come back after every call and we debrief after calls. We talk it out. We just had one. The staff sergeant, I'm not sure if he's on yet still or not, but we just had one here last week that was a particularly harrowing call where we ended up doing CPR and trying to revive somebody with the RCMP. Some of their members, some of our members, and same thing. We did a debriefing after it. Did mental health follow up with the members and did all the things that we need to do. So we definitely don't put her back in the filing cabinet and leave it there for another day. We try to deal with it on the front side. So
thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that they're being utilized appropriately and you feel the members are taking advantage of it. So. Thank you, Chief.
Other questions? Councillor Ramage.
Thanks very much. I had a question about any progress on that pilot project for ambulance service. I noted the number of ambulance calls, and even 2 weeks ago noticed there was quite a few Medivive ambulance responding to the city of Warming. Can you speak to how that's progressing?
Yeah, I sure can. Actually, I talked to my counterpart, Chief Dick in Martinsville here this morning on that very subject, just to see if they've seen any action whatsoever on the pilot program, and they have not, nor have we. So I believe that their idea of having the third free car, as we were discussed, Saskatoon has to have 2 ambulances free to respond to emergency calls. And then when that third call comes in, or that third car clears, it's supposed to be based out of Warman and Martensville alternating weeks. I don't believe that they're, with COVID, that they're in a spot where they even have a second free car, let alone a third free car. So we haven't seen any support on that front at all.
Okay. Thank you for the update, Chief Austin.
Other questions? Councillor Beck.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Phil. Chuck, Russ, 2 points to note. Certainly this year, thank you very much for, for certainly reporting on the mental health of our, certainly of our force. I'm like, it is always good to know that, let's say where our members stand, especially in the current environment. So thank you very much for that. Regarding a question though, so like obviously with our water supply truck, and this year we can do the virtual, let's say, systems and inspection and whatnot virtually. You did say that the completion date here I think was let's say expected for December 16th. So with that, what does the actual delivery of that truck look like? Like are we going to have to send let's say people out there to actually let's say pick it up and drive it back, or is that going to be, or is that on the manufacturer to actually deliver that to us?
Yeah, it's actually on the manufacturer. So part of their bid was after the pre-delivery inspections done at the factory, barring any issues that might be found with the truck, they're basically going to put it on a flat deck and deliver it to our door. So it doesn't get the highway miles, which is kind of a nice thing. So, and that's totally on them. When I talked to the manufacturer last week, they said that because I said, are we going to get jammed up as far as Christmas break and factory shutdown and things like that? And they said the courier they use is a national company and they're 24/7, 365. So he said, even if the truck was cleared to go on Christmas Eve, the truck would pick it up on Christmas Eve. So.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Other questions? I just have a couple things here. By the way, whenever you get calls, if you need to take it, take it. A couple things. I saw that alarm calls are down, and so I'm going to give you 3 quick little questions here. So alarm calls are down. I'll let you.
Yeah, I'm just pulling it onto a screen.
Sounds good. Alarm calls are down, and I'm just, if that's related to any fines that have been given out, or if there's any ties to that, or if you know why that is. I also have, what are the pictures you sent? Like, what is that? I didn't know what it was. And the other thing you had is in your report that it changes every couple days. Now, is that a report from SHA that you're getting as a directive? So every couple days you get a report from SHA?
Yeah, actually, so we'll start with the SHA and I'll work my way back. So with that one, they actually give us an update every single day. And they go off of the latest science and the best numbers and kind of a best practices around the province. We noticed when the first part of COVID, when it first broke out, we didn't know, nor did the SHA we didn't know how serious it was going to be, how big of a scope, what we needed to do. Now we've learned a lot more about it, and they can send out direction now saying, this level of PPE should be worn for this or that. And then somebody might mention, well, X happened or Y happened, and they're pretty fluid. They'll realize that if there's something that's working better, they'll send out a new direction and say, okay, yeah, I know we told you 2 days ago that it was this, but we're going to go this way. So protocols and things change. We've become really good at looking at the bottom of the page for the amended date, so that we're up to date with our most recent spreadsheets and things like that. But yeah, it's a very fluid situation, and it's based on best practices. And we're sure not going to lag behind here in Warman. So if there's a change and it's the right thing to do, we're at the pointy end of that stick for sure. Alarm calls? No, actually, we haven't levied a single infraction here for false alarms, which is fantastic. It's not. I don't think we get the alarms to maybe the state that the RCMP do. Generally, if there's an alarm and it comes in and it's false, we issue an order right away that their fire. How it works with fire is thou shalt get your fire alarm fixed immediately, or you will put somebody on fire watch 24/7, and they'll phone us if there's a fire. And that's not a great option for them. So they get the repairs done pretty quick. So we're pretty lucky that way. As far as how I can explain how far they're down, I have no idea. It's just, I don't know, maybe better technology and people learn their lessons. I'm not sure, but we're sure glad to not be going out on the calls. That's for sure. And then the third one, as far as the pictures go, basically it's a side view of the truck and then a couple other views. Basically the back of that truck is our water delivery system. So what you're looking at, this truck has the ability, let's say we have a fire in the south end of Warman, where there's no fire hydrants, let's say, and instead of hooking up a fire engine 400 meters away and then to a hydrant and then another 400 meters to another fire truck and relaying and that way, this truck can drive in there. It's all operated by the cab. So the driver actually has a joystick in the cab that you can, and a camera, you can basically pull up to a water site or a portable tank, dump your water and drive away without ever having to get out of the vehicle. The only time you have to get out is to refill it. So that big silver chute and all the things you saw there are all the things that we need to make water delivery quick. So this truck is, it's designed for maximum revolutions. So we don't leave it sitting on a scene. It pulls in, dumps water as fast as it can. It should be able to dump that truck in less than a minute, and then it's gone to go get more water. So it's going to be a huge asset for the areas where we don't have hydrants and out in the rural as well. And I know, and just so the new councillors may not be aware, but when we open a new subdivision, lots of times the water system or the hydrants that you see out in a new subdivision aren't turned on until a person applies for their first water meter, because there's a bunch of testing and things that have to be done. And if there's not regular water flowing, it can be really costly to maintain those lines. So there could be 5 or 6 brand new houses going up in an area, and it might not have a hydrant for fire protection until somebody actually has the ability to flow water. So that's where this truck's really going to come into play too, is with all our new construction.
Good, thank you. Any final questions, anyone? Thank you very much, Chief Austin. Have a great day. Move on to finance. Amanda. Oh, sorry. We have city manager report here.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have one item for council's consideration and information today. So it's regarding the 2021 assessment revaluation. 2021 will be the property assessment revaluation year in Saskatchewan. The last revaluation was performed in 2017. So for the 2021 revaluation, the base date used for the assessment values will be January 1st, 2019, which basically means that the values that are used in determining the 2021 numbers will be based on the market that was there prior to 2019. The Saskatchewan Assessment Agency, or SAMA, is responsible for developing and maintaining the province assessment policies, standards, and procedures. They are also responsible for audit, assessment, and review. Sorry, I'm not sure if I bounced out there.
It's all good.
They are also responsible for the audited assessment, review, and confirmation of the municipal assessment roles. But they also provide property valuation services to most municipalities in Saskatchewan. The city of Warman does contract SAMA to perform our assessment valuations for our city, included in the revaluation of the property assessment for 2021. In early November, we did receive a trend report from SAMA, which provided a global look at our community and the effects that the revaluation will have when the new assessments are implemented in 2021. We are fortunate that what we see in the overall revaluation is that there's very little change. However, within the different property classes, there is a minor shift between them from the previous revaluation to the one that we're going to see implemented in 2021. With residential is down 1.99%, multi-unit is down 0.66%, Ag and railway are virtually the same, and commercial is up 2.58%. So that's kind of the shift that we saw between the classes here. I wish to point out that these figures are preliminary figures, but also change very little when the revaluation is finalized. I should also note that the above is the shift between property classes within each property class. You can see that shifts will be higher or lower for some individual properties. So this is just a global amount, just a report showing just the trends that we're expected to see. Once we've received the assessment numbers for 2021 and we've heard from the province if there's any changes in percentage of value, etc., we will be providing a further report to council for consideration, which will be regarding our tax policy or when we establish the mill rate. And that will be once the budget's set, we know what the mill rate increase is going to be if there is one. And then we'll be looking at how these changes would be affected between the property classes and provide a report to council at that time. So there's no recommendation from administration at this point, and it's only for council's information. But again, once we get all the figures from SAMA, again, this is just a trend report for council's information, but we'll be able to provide a better indication of what type of properties within the commercial and industrial. So you might see, industrial go up more than commercial, et cetera, but those will be coming in the future.
Good. Any questions for City Manager Smith? Councillor Tooley.
Thank you, City Manager Smith. One of the things that I see just where you have the current, the percentages of value that are there. And I understand that there's been a little bit of a lag with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. They've been trying to determine what the percentages of value are going to be changing to for 2021. And I understand at this point that the commercial industrial percentage of value is going to be changing. I've heard in the neighborhood of it's going to be decreasing down to 85%, while the majority of the others are going to be remaining the same. And so I guess question number one is it safe to assume that with that change, I guess shifting some of the tax dollars from the commercial industrial section, is that going to mean that's going to be redistributed amongst the other groupings? Would be the first part of my question.
I guess it's hard to predict now because really this, again, in this trend report, they're basing it on the same POV or percentage of value as the previous year. I haven't heard anything of a change, but that may come, certainly not as a result of what we're seeing here in Warman, because it's pretty consistent that there was very little change, but I know in other communities there's been certainly larger change in the commercial going down, or residential, and they may see an effect across the whole province to make the decision on that percentage of value. And of course, really one of the reasons that they do the percentage of value is for the education portion of the property tax, to try to keep it the global numbers in the same volume or amounts for education purposes coming from each residential or commercial, etc. So I haven't been involved in those discussions. Possibly yourself in the SAMA meetings, the annual meeting or the regional meetings, they may have presented that information, but that hasn't been provided to the municipalities, I don't believe.
Okay, thank you. I guess, and that is my understanding that the commercial industrial is going to be shifting from 100% of value. I think I've heard that's probably going to be around 85 is where the ministry's landed on that one. And then I guess there's also been there was a bit of a delay actually in the ministry making that decision. And so normally is there going to be, with them having a delay on that, is there going to be any delay then for the city of Warman to be sending out assessment notices? Or I guess the assessment notices come from SAMA. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and is there
No,
any?
we send out the assessment notices, but we have to have the information first before we can send them out.
Okay, right. And because there was a bit of a delay with them deciding the percentages of value, is that gonna delay the city's ability to mail those notices out? I know City of Saskatoon's they're actually pushing theirs back 2 weeks, from what I understand.
Yes, we wouldn't. The information that we present is everything. There's the assessed value of assessment, which is 100% for everybody, and then the percentage value, of course, as you're aware, the percentage value is added to that to give the taxable assessment, and we would need that information before we sent the notices out. Again, I haven't been provided any information that they've been delayed. There was a promise at the beginning of last year that by December that we will have all the assessment information we require. But I haven't heard any change from that. And I might defer to Amanda on whether she's heard anything from the province in regards to what you have heard. Sorry to push on.
No, that's okay. Sorry. The information we've received so far from SAMA is that we can expect to still have our assessment information on time. So we are expecting to have our information still by the end of December. Another thing to keep in mind, Councillor Tooley, is that we have a mill rate factor of 0.87 that's applied to the commercial property taxable assessment. So we do have some room, like should they decrease that amount from 100% down to 85%, we have the mill rate factor that we can apply to adjust that balance of taxation to.
Right, and I think I guess my point earlier was that where we're probably gonna, because we have the ability to do that, we can sort of, from the municipal side of things, we can alter. But I think where we're going to see some shifts is going to be probably in the educational portion of the tax bills.
And that you could be absolutely correct on that, depending on what they do. If they shift to try to mitigate the education portion going from commercial class to residential or vice versa, that may have an effect on us if we're above average on commercial compared to another community. I guess that's what I was trying to say before. On the education end, as Amanda had articulated, that from the municipal portion and what I'd put in my report is, once we have that information, we will be able to provide scenarios to council, but it's a bit early right now without knowing exactly what the percentage of value is and what the assessment numbers are for us to start doing some analysis of impacts, but we certainly will be doing that and providing council with a report in the future of what each scenario how it will impact the businesses or residents in our community. I hope that answers the question.
For today, it does. Councillor Seed, you had your hand up. Still have the question?
A quick question, Bob. I had noticed that in the reports here, and I understand there's a bit of a transition happening with our EMO right now. There is no report directly related to the EMO, and I was just wondering if for the next committee of the whole, we can expect to see a report from the current, I guess, people in place to oversee the EMO.
Yeah, we certainly can. We can put it on with the information. Again, we had the staff sergeant here, and it'll be the next report. We'll have the EMO on it as well for the next committee of the whole.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else, Councillor Johnson?
Hi, Bob. So I was looking through the strategic plan, and I am just going to be asking about whether or not we secured a consulting firm for the first milestone for the climate change and the emissions testing.
No, we haven't. That was kind of put on a couple of reasons. One was, when we were looking at it, that was a plan for the beginning of to first quarter, second quarter, I think it was of, I don't have the document in front of me right now, but to have something in place by then. But just as a result of COVID, it was very difficult to get, consultants and traction, to be honest, to move forward with that priority over some of the other things that we were looking at. But we have actually started having discussions with FCM through, that's the programs through FCM, the Partners for Climate Protection. And we've already almost completed our baseline. We're waiting for some information that's been lagging from other entities. We don't really have any control over getting the information from SAS Power and those types of entities to give us the data so that we can create a base mark, but we are working on it for sure.
Any other questions for City Manager Smith? Councillor Peterson.
One thing we've seen on your reports pretty consistently for the last year or two has been in regards to whistle cessation from CN, and it's usually always the same. We're waiting to hear from CN, and they never seem to be willing to become forthcoming with actually what we need to do. I'm wondering if the time isn't upon us that we send a letter to CN, CC it to the federal Minister of Transportation and our MP and maybe even the PM's office and say enough's enough. I mean, not say exactly, but paraphrase, enough's enough. What are the targets we have to meet so that we can work towards meeting it?
We're open to anything. I know that Brad's been working diligently with CN to try to get to a situation where we know exactly the costs and exactly what we have to do in order to get whistle cessation, because I know in previous, the City Council has been working on this far longer than I've been here. I think it probably started in about 2012, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there. And there was a lot of things that council had a lot of cost put into gates and lights and things like that, with the anticipation that they were going to get whistle cessation authorization in the city. They did that, implemented it. It was put forward to CN and to Transport Canada, and it came back with more reporting that had to be done. We did that reporting. We hired an engineering firm to do a crossing report for both crossings. That was presented to them. They had more questions after that, and then they came back and indicated that they wanted us to put fences up. You're well aware of all of the things that have been done along the way. But what we do want to do is we want them to make a commitment to us that once we do all these things, that's it. They will then give us approval, because we don't want to have more expenditures, and more expenditures, and then they say, no, we're not going to do it. So it is taking a long time. I got to say that, in fairness to CN and Transport Canada, it is not their favorite thing to not have whistles and other safety devices. They look at that as a real, takeaway from the safety perspective. But we weigh that against, compared to the what the residents would, the situation it puts residents into, being woke up in the middle of the night from the whistles or the horn of the train. So it's a big process. It's a long process, and I'll maybe ask Brad if he wants to add anything else, but it's not certainly if you want to. If council wishes to send the letters, that's certainly something that they can give us direction to do, and we'll certainly do that. I just wanted to give you the update, kind of where we were at today. It is a long process. Brad, do you have?
Yeah, so I guess the last correspondence that we had was to Bob's point, I guess what we're trying to do is there's kind of 4 outstanding issues that were brought up in the AECOM report. And what we're trying to do is get from CN that an absolute yes, if you do these 4 things, we will approve whistle cessation. And so the last email that was sent was October 30th. Basically, again, with just very direct questions, is this 5-foot fence in this location? And if we do, there's a couple things with the gradient and signage. If we do these 3 things, will we be granted whistle cessation? And the last email that I got back was basically that they are reviewing the matter and will need to ensure compliancy for the whistling requests, and will be in touch when they have more information. And that's kind of where it was left off near the end of October. But to Bob's point, again, if council wishes us to kind of move forward in another direction or with a letter, then definitely we could look at doing that.
I mean, I don't know what the rest of council thinks, but I think that this is dragged on for at least, that I can recall, at least 7 years. There's been some significant costs in the city after some verbal commitments from CN that they have not held up their end of the bargain. So I feel that at this point that a strongly worded letter, saying, put it on paper, let us know what we have to meet to get to cessation, and commit that that's what we have to meet.
Other comments from councillors on this? Councillor Seed?
I would agree with Trevor's statement there. As somebody that lives relatively close to the tracks, there seems to be some trains that go through and are extremely respectful and let off some horns that are barely heard. And then there's other people that seem to be personally wanting to wake up everybody that's anywhere near the Legend Center. So I think that it's been something that I've heard in the community a lot for anybody that lies near the tracks, that certainly the whistles are inconsistent and definitely problematic, because people that are away from the tracks, it's not an issue for them, but those of us that are near them, it's borderline ridiculous what happens there some night, and some nights it's every 30-35 minutes.
City Manager Smith?
Yeah, I was just gonna maybe respond to the comment, because we've raised that issue too with CN regarding the, sometimes it'll be a short whistle, and then through the next train will be a long and a short and a long and a short before each. And the information we got back from CN was that it's actually the ones that are loud and they're hearing for a long period of time. So it's kind of a long and a short and a long before they get to the intersection is the appropriate way. There is some that don't do the appropriate, for the reasons that they don't want to wake people up or during the time of day. But in actual fact, the ones that we get annoyed with are the ones that are actually doing it right. The engineers they're doing the train. So yeah, it's the best thing is just if the only way to deal with the situation is get the whistle cessation. Then you'll never be it won't be an issue again, whether there's somebody that's might be doing it absolutely proper and then the other one having respect for the neighborhoods. So
anyone else want to comment about it? Is anybody opposed to sending a letter? I guess let's go with that, because I think it's a proactive move. It doesn't cost us anything, and I think we can put something together. So we'll work on putting something together then. I was actually part of the meeting where we met directly with CN. Cheryl and I both met with CN, and it's as Bob said, like it's like us dealing with safety issues. Like we have some of our own that they don't want any liability with any of this. And when something happens on their tracks and they haven't crossed every T and dotted every I, they own it. And so they're looking out for every bit of safety within the community. And I know Councillor Jones in the previous council had a comment that he found the sound soothing. And so it was almost a different perspective. And some of the meditation that I have, they have a thing that's train whistles, and it's interesting that it is perspective sometimes too. That it was hearing different perspectives. But I'll talk to Aaron and we'll get something put together as far as something that can be sent out or emailed out to all the people you had mentioned. That I think that's fine. Okay. Anything else for City Manager Smith? Okay.
Thank you.
We'll move down to finance. Amanda. And we can't hear you.
Sorry. Good afternoon, Mayor Philipchuk and City Council. Please find below 5 items that I have for Council's consideration and review at today's meeting. The first item I have is 2019 tax enforcement. So included in Appendix A, you'll see properties listed that have had previously registered tax liens placed on them. So a motion will be required to authorize the city treasurer to proceed to acquire title in accordance with the Tax Enforcement Act. This motion authorizes the city to serve the 6-month notice or Form C on the property, as well as move along properties that still have arrears balances 6 months after the notice is deemed served. So the recommendation that I would take to council is that council approve the city treasurer to proceed to acquire title on those properties listed in Appendix A in accordance with the Tax Enforcement Act. I also have a second tax enforcement listing that you'll see in Appendix B. These are properties for which council had previously provided a resolution authorizing the treasurer to proceed to acquire title. So council has already authorized the city administration to serve the Form C or the 6-month notice. So at this time, administration is requesting a resolution from council to proceed to submit request for consent, which is Form C, to the Provincial Mediation Board. And the recommendation I have is that at the next regular meeting of council, that city council authorize the city treasurer to proceed to acquire title on those properties listed in Appendix B. These listings will both be updated prior to the council meeting for any payments that might have come in. The next item I have, would you like me to stop right now, Mayor Philipchuk, for any questions, or just proceed?
I think we might as well go through your report and then we can come back to any questions.
Sure.
The next if somebody has a question, they can put up their hand, but I guess we can continue on though.
Okay, sure. The next item I have is the quarterly financial update. So you'll find attached in Appendix D the quarterly financial report for the period ending September 30th, 2020, as well as the supplemental schedules and notes. You'll also see the year-end projections and as well as the projection over under budget. There's a lot of information here. So just a couple things I'll highlight on is that revenues recognized to date are at 99% of the budget. This is largely due to general government tax levies having been recorded in June. So we see $10 million revenue there. Expenses recognized to date are at 55% of the budget. This is lower than expected, largely due to recreation and the effects of COVID. So even though we had a large reduction in revenue in the recreation department too, in comparison to the money that's brought in through taxation, you don't see as big of a difference in the percentage as you do in the expenses. So within the projected year-end discrepancies, you'll see that within that revenue section, we are expecting revenue to come in under budget by about $320,000. And then turning your attention towards expenses, you'll see an overall expense savings of just under $715,000. Wages, because of temporary layoffs of 26 employees, as well as a freeze on hiring summer students, resulted in overall savings of just over $427,000. And so overall, after accounting for lost revenue and considering savings to expenses, administration is expecting to see an operating surplus of $389,000 higher than originally budgeted for. The recommendation is that the September 30th, 2020 quarterly financial report be taken to the next City Council meeting for approval. The third item I have is the quarterly capital project update. So included in the appendices G through I is the capital project update laid out per department and details for the current budget of each capital item, expenditures to date, expected future expenses, and the anticipated budgets and surplus, as well as a note from the department manager regarding the status of the project. Administration recommends that the September 30th, 2020 capital project budget report be taken to the next City Council meeting for approval. The next item I have is utility billings added to the property tax roll. Administration notes that the first property within the attachment M is a commercial rental property, and the second attachment N is a residential property. The previous renters moved out of the properties, leaving outstanding balances on the utility accounts. attempts by administration to collect on the accounts with both the renters and the property owners has been unsuccessful. Administration recommends the request to apply these outstanding utility balances be related to property tax rolls approved at the next regular meeting of council. And the last item I have is a cell phone policy amendment. The cell phone policy allows eligible employees a cell phone reimbursement based on job duties and requirements. As you can see laid out here, all other supervisors within the city of Warman do have a cell phone allowance. So I'm just requesting that the finance officer, who has 4 direct reports, be included in that listing, as well as based on a level of responsibilities and expectations, the HR generalist as well. Administration recommends a resolution be provided to amend the current City of Warman cell phone policy to include the finance officer and HR generalist at the next regular meeting of council.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. Amanda, I just want to say thank you very much for all of the notes to financial statements that you've provided. Obviously, this document here certainly outlines all of the, or let's say all of the the major changes, for each of the the line items for both revenues and expenses. Especially with the effect of COVID, certainly on our finances and lines of service. So I just want to thank you very much for the excellent documentation that you provided us. A lot of detail there. I do have one question regarding note number 1, and that is it's noted here that the RM of Corman Park, the fire grant, that's outstanding. Is that usually paid earlier in the year, or do they wait till year end before actually kind of submitting that? And with this here, do we need to send them a letter asking, when this might actually be received? So if you could maybe just outline the process just around that, that would be fantastic.
We usually do not receive that grant until Q4, so into the year end. And I actually am not sure if the fire chief reaches out as a reminder or if it's just something that they initiate on their own.
Excellent. Right on. Thank you. And I suppose I would just like to end, with let's say an overall nod to, to our CAO and also all of our staff here in Warman. Obviously, with this year COVID, we've done a huge amount of changes, certainly adapting to the to the COVID environment, and obviously the work and the effort that goes into that, and the fact that we've been able to certainly meet those financial challenges, so whether we don't have huge impacts on our budgeting, especially going forward into future years, I think has been absolutely fantastic. Obviously, I look to other communities here in Saskatchewan. I know of one, $55 million of grants they've received, and they still have a $20 million shortfall. We're obviously nowhere close to anything like that. So I just want to certainly recognize all of the staff and the efforts gone towards that, and also the decisions made by council to certainly ease that transition for our residents. So I just wanted to make those points. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Ramage.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. So Amanda, two questions I'd have to start off with. Your report mentions that there's some businesses that have come off the business tax incentive program. Probably don't have the information for today, but for the next council meeting, I would be interested to know how many businesses are still on that tax incentive program and where they are within coming off of that as well. One of the other questions would be, it seems like there was a really good take up on the green card program. Do we know if there is additional demand for this program that we might be able to provide if it's being so well taken up?
In answer to your first question, yes, I don't have that information just right in front of me, but I can definitely get it to you as far as the business tax incentive program and what businesses have kind of come off it this year. And your second question, yes, we have had significant year over year, we have significant pickup on that program. It's still not a large percentage of households in Warman in total.
And I guess the last question would be, what financial risks might the city look at in 2021? Yeah, are we still looking at Parks and Recreation being the budget line highest at risk, or have we done any projections in terms of what that looks like?
I think two things. One, recreation is definitely a risk for us. The facility costs a lot of money to even just keep open. So when our revenue is affected, it costs even more to keep that facility going. Another risk we have is that we are expecting to see a drop in our revenue sharing money that we receive, grant money that we receive. So I don't think we're expecting that to be significant in 2021, but possibly in 2022 and 2023 as the level of spending in the province declines.
Okay, and just one last follow-up on that. So it's my understanding that the property tax deferrals and the utility payment deferrals, those programs are all completed at this point.
They are, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Tooley, you had your hand up.
I did. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Filipchuk. I just have a couple of questions just around the cell phone policy. And one of the things I guess I want some clarification around is, so the way where the policy works right now, my understanding is positions are identified to receive a percentage back of their cell phone bills. And do we have any benchmark that we utilize as far as what the maximum reimbursements would be in some of those instances? And the reason I wonder is it seems more and more that, when people do their cell phone contracts, there's a variety of different levels of service you can get, right? So somebody could have a $60 cell phone bill, somebody could have a $120 cell phone bill. So I wonder, do we have any sort of caps or ceilings on what those numbers might look like? And does it also include if people are, say, financing their phones, because you can do the programs where you pay $10 a month or $15 a month to actually have your phone as well?
Amanda, you disappeared.
Oh, did Amanda disappear?
Just one moment. It looks like the City of Warman people disappeared there. Just give it a moment here. I think they, okay, Amanda, you're back. Oh, we can't hear you. You're mute.
Hi, I disconnected from the meeting. So I heard the first part of the question that Councillor Tooley had about the cell phone policy and what the maximum reimbursement is. And then that's all I heard. So to answer that question, the maximum reimbursement is $70, and that's based on the average business plan. And the 50% reimbursement then is right around the $33.46, actually, I think is what it is.
You're muted, Kevin.
Sorry, that actually answered my question fairly well, Amanda. I was just, where my question was, or where my concern was that there are a variety of different, I guess, different levels of service that people have. And I'm just aware that a lot of the cell phone providers now too are doing something where they there can be different amounts that you're financing the phones. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't covering that.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, did you freeze? I think the city staff have frozen again.
Yes, she's indicated to me she has, so she'll be coming in again.
Okay, we'll just wait a moment. We may need fiber at City Hall.
We can probably carry on. I'm not sure what, like, the rest of us are at City Hall here and are still on, so I'm not exactly sure what's happening with her.
Okay.
iPad, but if if you wish to carry on, I can try and answer some questions as well.
Sounds good. Okay, Councillor Peterson.
One of my questions is also around the cell phone policy, but a little different than Councillor Tooley's, and that is I see that, you know, we got on here to request for the finance officer to be on that policy because they're a supervisor, but I question whether just being a supervisor is a reason for it. Like, I don't know what the finance officer would need to communicate off hours or when they're away from the office that it couldn't wait until they're back in the office. It doesn't seem to me like a position that would be requiring an immediate need to be in contact at all times or anything. I understand the managers. I understand the outdoor staff with supervisors with Parks and Rec and with Public Works, but I'm not sure about the finance officer. I'll wait for the rest.
I had disconnected again, but no, I've joined the message or that call again. So I think I heard only half of your question, Councillor Peterson, but I think you were asking why the finance officer needs a cell phone allowance. So just to provide support and information to her direct reports. It's, you know, our other supervisors within the department or within the city, I guess, who have people reporting to them and are required to provide information to them, even when they're not at work, are applicable to the policy. So it's just kind of trying to keep consistent amongst the employees.
Right, but I guess my comment is that do you really need that position to be in communication when they're not in the office? Like, is anything that the finance officer is doing is of such dire immediate need that they can't wait until they're back in the office?
I suppose we could probably make that argument for, you know, numerous people who are currently on the cell phone policy allowance that know most of the things that they are required to do while they're not at work could probably wait.
Well, if that's the case, then yeah, I mean, if really the cell phone policy should only be, and those employees should only be in contact if it needs to be something while they're on the job, or they need to be in contact when they're not in the office. Really, outside of that, like, I mean, there's no need to be, you know, paying for their cell phones or for them to be using their cell phones to be in communication if it's something that isn't of an emergent need.
Okay, other comments? Councillor Seed.
In my thinking, when I was looking at this, does the cell phone policy, though, not also take effect for people that may have to, you know, use emails from their phones or forward it maybe when they're not immediately in the office? My thinking is that by paying for half of their cell phone, that, you know, we equate it to being on the phone itself, but quite often there's a lot of information that's passed on through electronic means, through a personal cellular device that could be off hours as well. Is that something that you see as part of the need for that?
That is most definitely part of it. It's, you know, texting, phone calls, as well as email, responding to emails.
Right. I can only speak from personal experience, but we find with the management team that quite often having that accessibility to emails without having your desktop or having a laptop that's literally sitting on your lap all the time, quite often we can be quite a bit more efficient by being able to send that quick message or forward an email off to the proper person so that they have it on their desk for 8 o'clock in the morning. I personally believe that that's a pretty simplistic way to cover, you know, $30 or $40 for somebody to ensure that they're, quite frankly, they're accessible 24/7. And the efficiencies you get out of that seems to be something that personally I would be in favor for.
I would also just like to say that with regards to these 2 employees where I'm requesting the allowance for right now, they do have their email on their phones, and they are replying to everybody via text and email and phone call without even having the allowance. So I feel like they're, employees who have, there's value in that,
Other points with that one? I'm probably where Marshall is too. Again, I see the value in it. Whether we like it or not, we're turned on unless, like you say, we give ourselves permission. There's no coverage at all that we don't look at emails after hours. There are some people who do that, but obviously if there's some coverage along the way, those people have their phones, their emails on after hours. So I see the benefit of doing that. Councillor Beck.
Certainly to that point, certainly in the COVID environment here that we are, let's say at, with this year, we have asked them, employees to kind of work from home and to certainly be accessible. And this would certainly factor into, to one of those associated costs with that. And I certainly agree that this certainly does enhance, let's say the effectiveness of these particular roles. These are point, let's say point roles, not whenever where like there might be some HR questions that are needed, to be answered, say sooner rather than later. And, certainly, having that accessibility could certainly streamline like a lot of the activities that go on in those offices, to which, we as council don't fully understand or appreciate. So yeah, certainly for me, this is not one of those major line items that I'm worried about, but thank you very much for the conversation on this.
Thank you. Any other comments for our financial officer? Just one point I want to mention about the utilities one. When does the owner find out that there's a delinquent account? I guess that I see that they get the bill after, but is it just at the end? I do appreciate that emails were going at the end that the city was trying to get from the tenant, but also the owner, letting them know that this money is owed at this time. But at what point would the owner actually find out that there's a delinquent account?
So we have some property owners who are on top of where their renters are at constantly. So they're always gathering that information. They're taking the initiative to get that information themselves. However, for the ones who aren't, once we get to the point where we're putting the letter on the door and making the phone call saying the payment needs to be made by this date or we'll proceed with shutoffs, the property owners are notified at that point.
Okay, thank you. Okay, other questions? Okay, Councillor Peterson.
Matt has heard this comment from me before in regard to utilities, and I'm going to keep saying it, and that is in regards to residential rental properties, I believe that unless the city is going to mandate that the property owners have to have the utilities in their name and not in the renter's name, that the city has no business charging back the utility rates to the property owners for a bill that's not theirs. And I will be voting against this, as I always do.
Okay. Other comments? Councillor Seed.
Without naming the specific individuals that were on some of these reports, but I can say that based on my experience in the community and talking with individuals, I see some repeat offenders, so to speak, people that are consistently are not paying their bills for different avenues related to business and expenses there. While I understand the frustration that Councillor Peterson has with saying, look, I own the building, I'm not responsible for all the utilities there, I think that it's something that if in fact we don't have a bylaw in place that says that that's in fact the case, then I would certainly be one in favor of making it the case, because at the end of the day, although it's not the business owner's responsibility to ensure at this point that their tenant is paying their property taxes or their also their utility bills, quite frankly, it's also not the city's business to be supplementing those and allowing them to skip from one business to another and continue to do the same thing.
Councillor Peterson.
I just want to remind Councillor Steed that I've said residential. Commercial, I'm 100% okay with that being done the way it's done. It's the residential renters and tenants that I'm talking about, which is completely different.
Okay, Councilor Ramage.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. With the residential rental utilities, there's, I believe it's a $290 non-refundable, or it's only refundable once the tenant moves out. Is that how that works?
Yes.
So is there, once this starts becoming delinquent, does that start eating into that deposit?
So with a final billing, so now when the amount owing is non-collectible from the renter or the account holder, we do apply the $290 deposit at that time.
Okay, so that it's just applied to the final billing. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Seed was first. Next.
Yeah, so do we have and again, I do apologize to Councilor Peterson. Yeah, that clearly a little bit mistaken there between the residential and the commercial. My question is do we currently have something in place that prohibits an individual, let's say myself, if I was in arrears, from setting up utilities at another location?
Yes, so if you are in arrears and you do try to set up at another location, we do transfer your arrears balance. So then it does not become the problem of the property owner. It would follow you within the city. We do have the ability to do that.
Okay, and is that something that we're actively doing?
Yes.
Okay.
So the problem becomes when the renter moves out of Warman.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Beck.
Thank you very much, Mayor Philipchuk. 2 points. First one, a question. So Amanda, regarding the deposit that we have on file, don't we have that in place where if that, like once that deposit has been put in after 2 years of, let's say, good standing, that they can actually apply to get that back? Does that not apply to residential properties?
That does not apply to renters. So we don't return the refund to renters. They cannot refund based on good account history. We hold the refund until the final billing for renters.
Right. Gotcha. So property owners, they can go ahead and do that, but anything that's classed as a rental aspect, that's on hold.
You are correct.
Excellent. Okay, and that's certainly a great point. Certainly to this whole discussion, I mean, I still hold steadfast that with this year, the municipality, we supply service to that property, and regardless of whether or not that property owner decides to rent out their facility, lease it out, do whatever, whether it's commercial or industrial. With us here, quite honestly, these are services that are provided by the city. It is the property owner's responsibility to turn around and make sure that they have their protections crossed for any rentals, any lease agreements or anything like that, whatever contract that they come up to. With us here, the city of Warman should not play third party to that. With this here, quite honestly, what the owner decides to do in their business is their business. We supply the service at a cost that's clearly outlined with our policy and bylaws. And with this here, that is a financial cost that the owner certainly accepts, regardless of who actually signs, the agreement on there. It under the Cities Act, our established documentation says that we can add that to our taxes, and that's what I fully intend to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Peterson, something new?
This is a follow-up, okay? And that is that if that's, the way, if we want to continue down this path, you run the risk of not having any rental properties. And we're already short. We are badly short of rental properties in Warman for people who don't own and looking to rent. So I would suggest that if you do want to do it this way, that we change the policy and have it so that the utility billing has to be in the property owner's name, and then it's up to them to include that in their rent, however they're going to include in their rent, and then it's not an issue anymore.
Thank you for that. And they do have that option. And so I think that's something that's already there. In a sense, they have that option right from the beginning. Councillor C, did you have something to add?
Just one quick comment on that, further to what Richard had mentioned. I believe as somebody that rented, obviously, at one point in my life, his ideology there is actually excellent. property owners that own a residential place always have, 1 month's deposit put down in place to protect their interests. So why wouldn't the city have the same thing? If they're willing to take the steps to protect their own financial interests, the obligation to the city should also be part of that. So I would just say that I agree with Councillor Beck, and if in fact it's not in place now, it's something I would definitely be a big proponent to have in place in a very short order.
Thank you. Any other questions for, yes, Councillor Tooley.
Sorry, there's just one piece that that Amanda, you had mentioned that I wanted to seek some clarification on, and that was in regards to if somebody is in arrears with their utility account and they move to a new property and that arrears follows them, right? That was one of the things that was mentioned. And so I guess the question or the concern that I have in regard to that is if they continue in arrears at the new property that they've moved to, and then, when they move away from that property, and let's say they move out of the municipality, does the arrears that followed them, does that then become the responsibility of that homeowner at that time?
So I think it's possibly a two-part question. We would make them clear up their arrears with their previous account before we would create a new account at their new rental property for them. And then your next question is at the second rental property, if they leave arrears balance there. So the arrears balance will be applicable to the property they're currently in, because we would have had them clear up their balance at the first property before we give services at the second property. Does that make sense?
That was the clarification I wanted there, just because I certainly wouldn't want there to be, although I tend to disagree with that the, an outstanding balance should be applied to the property taxes, because, I've spoken about this previously. And one of the reasons I know I personally disagree with it is because the property owner themselves, as somebody who's renting the property out, the recourse that they have to maybe collect those arrears is a lot less of a stick than the city of Warman has, right? Where you can potentially utilize like a collection service and some of those kind of things, which would be available. And so a property owner doesn't necessarily have those kind of amenities at their disposal. But we've already had that discussion and we've landed where we've landed. But what I was really concerned about, just sort of with the way that you had mentioned it, was if there was arrears previously and they moved into a new property, would then a property owner be responsible for arrears from another property? But you clarified that, so thank you very much.
Thank you. It's probably a conversation that at some point we were going to have anyway, so it maybe saved us from having it next Monday too. So, and I also agree with Councillor Seed that damage deposit can be used to clear up some of those things along the way too. So there are tools for the owner to be able to handle that. Councillor Ramage, something new to add to this conversation?
Not to belabor the point, but I think I'm comfortable saying I'm probably the only one on council that's currently living in a rental property as a renter. I've also been a landlord. In general, I'm just going to say I would support where Councillor Beck and Councillor Seed are at on this. There are mechanisms that landlords can use. They are certainly not the same stick that a municipality can, but at the end of the day, the landlords need to make the decision of whether utilities are included in rent or whether they're a standalone. So I just wanted to add that in. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Anything else? Okay, we'll let you go. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.
We'll move now to City Clerk. City Clerk Johnson.
I forgot to unmute. Okay, I'm going to try to multitask here a little bit and share my screen at the same time as doing my report. So the first thing I have on my report is the council calendar for 2021. This is for informational purposes and will be brought to the next regular meeting of council for approval. I don't know if we want to just hold questions till the end, or do you want to do it as I'm going through my report, Gary?
Let's maybe just wait till the end. So I'll let you go through your report. Okay,
so here's the council calendar. The next thing I have is the volunteer awards for 2021. This time last year, we were fairly deep into the awards already. And I attached the volunteer awards report that was done up in June of 2020. And in my report, I state here is last year we did a lot of sponsorship, and it was fantastic how the community reached out and helped us out with this and trying to create an event again, or bring the event maybe just to a different level. But with COVID-19 having such a strong presence, I'm not really comfortable going around asking for sponsorship this year. I do have a couple options there to consider of council regarding the volunteer awards for 2021. And one is to continue as we did last year and plan a small formal evening, do a virtual presentation in April of 2021, plan for the same as last year and do the yard presentations in spring of 2021, or postpone the awards until fall instead of April, and either plan for a small formal event or presentation depending on what the COVID situation is. It'd be kind of nice to have a community event again if we do get that vaccine in the spring and we're actually able to all get together again. The other thing would be for council to consider allocating some money from the budget towards the awards, seeing as we won't be going out and asking our businesses for sponsorship this year, or I don't feel that we should ask the businesses for sponsorship this year. And there is an amount in there of, if we were to do an event, about $8,500, and that would be based upon the report from June of 2020. Or if we were just going to be doing the yard presentations, again, for about $4,000, that was about the cost of what it would have cost last year to do that. The other report I have is the election report. So this is from, so I'm going through my papers here trying to find it. The election report from this past election. Maybe I'll just pull it up on my screen so it's easier for me to follow along with. Is there any questions of the election report here? I guess we'll get to that to the question part. Yeah. There was a significant amount of work done to kind of update all of our election stuff here. So we can go over that at question time as well. And then my final part was the photographer's RFP. We have hired a city photographer. Her name is Rachel Wolf from Wolf Prints and Photography. She actually signed her contract last Thursday, I believe. I think she'll be a great part of our team here at the city as well.
Excellent. Thank you. So questions for City Clerk Johnson? Just a couple comments about the calendar. I'll mention my 3 comments that I have then if I don't see any hands up right now. The calendar, let's try it this year. There was some suggestion of maybe looking at the number of council meetings, but let's everybody reflect on that as we go the full year. If we have approval, that is, that we have our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, except for December, July, and August. So take a look at the calendar. This is fairly standard that we've used over the last many years. 1 o'clock committee of the whole. But then I think in a year from now, let's reflect on, is this the best way to handle our business or not? Okay. So I think that'll be a better time to go over that. The one I had also about the I support your direction with the volunteer awards. I was involved with that a bit going through it, and I agree. It'd be nice to have an event in September, and I support it as a budgetary item. And it is a year that probably you're not going and asking for donations, or it's maybe more of a general statement if somebody wants to donate that we would accept it, not really a door knocking one along the way. And my final point is about the election stuff. I actually like the signs out and about. Our turnout was so low still. It would be nice, sometimes it just needs to feel like there's an election happening. Now, we had a lot of other factors that came into play, like COVID and like a storm and like a provincial election and like a US election. But I guess some of the things I don't mind there, but some of the things about having just locations and they have to be so far apart and all that. So I think of the best place in the city for where I was telling people, if you want to know who's running, go look at the end of Centennial Street at Central, and because you'd see everybody sign there, and that was the one place to sort of see everybody sign. So that's my comments on it. I realize that doesn't have to be a decision item right now, but it's more of a recommendation. So I'll stop with that unless you want to. I don't know if there's anything to really comment on if you want out of that, but.
No
Okay.
real comments.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Ramage.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk, and thank you, Don, for all the work that you've done on the election. That would have been an incredible amount of work to do, particularly with everything that was changing with COVID. And hats off to you. Very, very well done. The quick question that I would have just on the election is: there's a recommendation for an assistant returning officer. I think that might be something of interest. I don't know that we're going to have the same conditions every election as we have this year, but it would be interesting to know what kind of skills, qualifications, or experience this person should have, and what they need to know to actually be effective as an assistant. So perhaps if there's some thoughts on that, not necessarily today, but moving forward, that would be interesting to see. With the volunteer awards, I'd actually like to see something virtual done in the spring. My concern is the vaccine delivery. Just reading in the news this morning, may happen on a population per capita basis. It may be until the end of the year. And while it provides a lot of hope that there's a light at the end of the tunnel for this, it may not be the silver bullet. It may not give us that opportunity for a formal event in September, as much as I think we all want to see that. But I do think it's really important to acknowledge the volunteers in our community. They're a huge part of any community and just how everything runs. So I'd like to continue the discussion on what we could do, even if that is virtual. I think I just had a general question on the photographer RFP. How are RFPs awarded, or what was the process within this?
So we sent out the RFP. We sent it, first of all, we hit everybody on our business list. We send them out the RFP in that area. We try to keep it as local if we can. And then we kind of open it up to social media. When the date comes in, we open up the RFPs, kind of go through them all and see which one would be the best fit to kind of go with the city's budgets, what our needs are, and that type of stuff. So we kind of went through it, and I sat down with City Manager Smith as well, and he went through the RFPs with me as well. And Rachel's RFP kind of offered us, the big part was the high quality, high resolution prints. She's offering it as a part of her RFP. For the other ones, there would be an additional charge per photo of anywhere from, I think it was $50 to $600, depending on what we were using them for. So with her offering those as a part of everything, that was fairly significant as well. So that's basically, we kind of look at the numbers and see if it'll fit within our budget and if they're accessible when we need them, and as well as the quality of photos that we would be getting as well, I guess.
Okay, thanks for that. I think my only concern with that award is that I don't really see anything defined other than the rate per hour. So I'm just hoping that as we move forward, that I don't know if I understand how their time is defined, whether that's the digital processing or what's all involved in that rate per hour. So when I look at that, I get a little nervous that that could actually exceed the value of the other ones, but just something to consider as we move forward with this RFP.
When I discussed it with Rachel, the rate per hour is the amount of time she spends taking the photos. So if she's coming out to an event, it'd be that rate per hour. And if it's a half hour, then it's not, she doesn't charge for the full hour. She charges as what she's taking the photos for.
Okay, that's really good information. I'd like to see that in the RFP responses, but that's really good information to have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Seed.
Mine, Doug kind of stole some of the thunder there right at the end. Mine was the same kind of question. It was just, what are the limitations of this? Because as somebody that, I do business contracts almost every day. It's something that there's no, like, is this from the second that, they got up till the second they go home? Is really what my question was. But furthermore to that, I guess the last bit of the question I would have is that where's the cap? So if we budgeted, $10,000 or 20,000 or whatever it is, at what point do we say that, we're wanting to adhere to this cap? So we'll provide you with $250 an hour, not to exceed, X amount. Is that something that's been discussed with her, or is that something that we've done in the past?
No, neither. No to neither either.
The bit of the concern there is that it's very open-ended. So we do contracts like this, there could be possibilities where really the person could go in and bill as they see fit, without, again, and I understand there's a trust value there and that we know them, and I respect that whole process. There's just no, it's a blank check that we're writing here with this RFP.
Comments?
If I could just make a comment to that. I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a blank check. I think when Dawn or anybody from the record department has somebody come in to do photos, there is a determination of how long do you think it'll do to do 6 headshots, and it'd be about an hour. So she has a very good grasp on what the cost is going to be for that event, and she or others will weigh that. Okay, if it's going to be for volunteer appreciation night, well, we'll have you, it's a 2-hour event, well, we'll have you come in for the first hour for doing XYZ. Would that be correct, Dawn?
Yeah, that's usually how we've been doing it. And same with the people over at Park and Rec as well. They kind of, we want you to come and shoot this for half hour, or do this here, or show up there. So we're very conscious of how long they're out there for. We try to keep them within the limits as well too.
Perfect. So essentially there's a verbal agreement before any events take place that you're saying, look,
we basically tell them how long we want them to come out there for and what we want them looking for pictures. Like if it's something specific that we're looking for, whether it's for the website or to take pictures to put into our leader guide, whatever, we're very specific with them what we require.
That alleviates any concerns that I had then, that it's not just them issuing us a bill at the end of the month and we just pay it. It's actually directed by yourself or whoever's involved with that. So thank you very much for that, Don.
And they let us know too if they're going to be going out and doing pictures around Warman. Like we like to get different seasonal photos done too. So going out in the summertime and taking pictures of people in the parks or whatever, or wintertime, the kids sliding on the hills. Like they let us know that they're going to be going out and how long they plan on going out for.
So ultimately you have first right of refusal then to tell them, no, don't do that, or we don't want that to happen. Exactly. Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councillor Peterson, you had something?
Yeah, I was going to say that, I understand with COVID, it's really hard to say, here's the events, give us a price for the events as we've done in the past. So I understand for this year, the hourly rate is that, and to keep a really good track of that with per event as part of the budgetary items for that event. Mm-hmm. But I would like to say that for this item for future RFPs, once we get past COVID, that we should really have a list of our items we're going to be using a photographer ahead of time, that be included as part of the RFP, and that we insist that the RFPs must include an event cost for those listed in the RFP, and that there be an hourly rate for those events that might be not listed. Because I know that's what we had in the past with this RFP, and I think it's important that once we get past this, to get back to that.
We do have a list of the events, and we did kind of put a little note at the top that due to COVID-19, our event list is probably not going to look like this. We use the same one as before. And she did opt out of doing like the bigger events because we weren't really sure if we're going to be having them at all, like the Candy Cane Ball and Santa Claus Days. And those are already arranged for this year too. So we just kind of went like, yeah. But there isn't a list of events that are in there, and they have that to look at when they're making their RFP up for us.
And just from experience, I know it was an invite, like at Canada Day celebrations, you knew that the photographer was there for the 1 hour they were invited. So it was pretty targeted as far as what the needs were of the city. So,
yeah. And what time we want them there too.
Right.
Right. Like there might be, we're not going to keep them there for the entire day of Canada Day. We'll keep them there for when we want them there.
Okay. Anything else? Councillor Beck.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Philip. So regarding the mail-in ballots, this year, Don, you highlight the fact that 98% were returned through the drop box, but did we get 100% of those back in?
We did not get 100% of them back in. So any ballot that did not come back in was considered a spoiled ballot. And some of them were actually sent out fairly early that did not come back in. So there was 11 spoiled ballots out of 126. And that if they don't come back, we just consider them spoiled. And I have it all tracked on a spreadsheet exactly when they were sent out. They were also, because on one of the sheets was a registration, like little registry sheet that I used to fill out my my spreadsheet with, and it had an email address on there. So there was a lot of email correspondence, and there was actually a reminder email about 7 days before the election that was sent out. And we also included a little link that gave the candidate's profile page to them so that if they weren't sure who to vote for, we gave them a couple information pieces to go check out the candidates and encourage them to get their mail-in ballots back. So we had 11, which I think was not too bad.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, and certainly with this year, like honestly, like I'm really surprised at the whole efficiency of it. Because like I know I was a little bit critical about the mail-in ballots to start off with, going, what could our cost be, right? Like we could be mailing these all over and whatnot. So I think that was a really good job in terms of like the process involved in that kind of thing. And really, when you look at it, let's say those 126 mail-in ballots for this year, with the total cost being just over $400, with that there, that's basically $3.25 per ballot out there. If you would kind of apply that to the full say votes received and whatnot, that's actually a pretty high efficiency rate, and that kind of thing. So yeah, so I just want to say congratulations on that job there, and certainly providing that amount of feedback, because like that could certainly be helpful in future elections. Keeping on the election front first, with this year on the election signs, with this year, while I'm certainly in favor of like the specific zones of where the signs could go, with this year, I think that certainly has a component to it, that would certainly bring like a lot of let's say condensedness in terms of where those signs could be. My only question that I have behind the election signs that you've let's say recommended is the 2-meter distance between each one of them. And certainly while I understand we need to socially distance during COVID, I don't know that that the election signs need to follow that same protocol. So I don't know, like I think if there was something that I would change, it'd be that distance in between. One thing I will say about this past campaign is I know with some of the candidates running at the time and whatnot, like there was actually really good communication back and forth in terms of saying, hey, you know what, your sign's down, or like, are you okay if I fix it up or whatever? And like that was certainly corresponded back and forth between a number of us. So certainly with that, I'm like I do think that there is a certain amount of decorum out there. Certainly like the fine and penalty for doing something inappropriately. I think that is worthwhile to keep in there. But the 2 meters between signs, I mean, you could have like literally like an like an undefined number of people running, so that could still stretch like the entire corridor of Central or Centennial Street. So so that would be the one thing there that I would question.
We could definitely shorten that distance between the signs. Everything's just been 2 meters apart lately. We just kind of went with the theme.
Yeah.
The one complaint I did have is that people were putting their signs directly in front of other people's signs. So it'd be blocking somebody else's sign. So that's kind of where it came in there. It's something that we can definitely look at. Those are just details.
Good. Thank you.
Right on.
Councillor,
and then,
oh, sorry.
yeah, and then just one last thing. So this is changing topics. So off of the election front. So with this year, with the volunteer appreciation, certainly this year, the I do think that that is a very worthwhile program to follow and whatnot. I myself, would still like to kind of keep the, like the budgetary aspect. Let's say, let's say in person, even though that might not actually happen for this current year, just because then with this year, it brings a certain amount of stability from one budget to the next, and that kind of thing. So while it might be something that we question in terms of its achievability in 2020, I would still like to keep the budgeted amount the same. I mean, like there again, we're talking like $8,000 versus, a possible $4,000. But, like there again, just to keep that cohesiveness, so that way there, you could, let's say, directly compare year to year, and there again, like even with the changes that that have been done, it might actually give us a few more options in terms of things that we might be able to do, whether it be virtual and that kind of thing, in terms of a digital platform or something done just to make sure that the recipients are certainly recognized. So I guess on that front, while I understand we might go virtual, I would still like to have that budget line consistent, basically kind of going on from 2019 right on through to 2021. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, and that's a decision I guess we have to make next Monday, that which one we go with, and based on her recommendations. And not that it can't change once we've made based on our current climate. Councillor Seed.
Just two quick points with regards to the election signs. One, I don't think any individual that's part of this meeting right now would be disappointed with their overall outcomes. I think that obviously that was a good thing. I do think, though, that going forward, one of the pieces of feedback that I did receive from community members is that there was too many signs, and that definitely was something that resonated. And guilty as charged, along with everybody else that's sitting here right now. I think, though, that if we are going to, except for Gary, I guess, going forward, I think that if we are going to allocate, say, spots for signs, I don't think that that's something that council should necessarily ultimately approve. I think that's something that we could have almost a voting system with residents to say, where is it that we can put these? Where do you like them? Because we have self-serving interests, or at least get recommendations from them as to where they would like to see them. And I think that would help to engage the community in a good way. Really, that's all I have. And then also with regards to the election, Dawn, I just wanted to say thank you, because I know that you busted your butt on it, and it certainly showed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peterson.
I just want to point out that there was a perception that there was more signs this election, but I think that's because of the provincial election, because in actuality, there was one candidate in 2016 that had more signs than the two top ones in this last election. Me and Ivan did not have as many signs as Kendall had last election. And that's one candidate alone. Never mind the two mayors and how many signs they had last election. So we didn't have anywhere near the number of signs this election that 2016 had. Not even remotely close. It's just a perception thing because the provincial election was right there. So I mean, I'm not in favor of making any changes to the sign, to the way we've done the signs. I think it ran just fine.
Thanks for those comments. And that's something that'll be ongoing. And again, our city evolves too, because some of those areas where we had signs will be developed by the next election. So that's our hope, is that maybe some of those areas that we had lots of signs will be developed, and especially in the south and the north that we had many signs. Also, congratulations, Dawn, on really making us cutting edge with the automated counting too. And because just hearing from the City Mayor's Caucus, that was one of the things that people have brought up a few times about what cities have done that or not. And, knowing that we've done it now, we're not scared of it, and that'll be the future. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any, Councillor Tooley.
Yeah, I just want to echo those same comments, Don. I think you did a fantastic job working as a returning officer, and lots of good things came out of the election as a result of that. And the automated counting machines that was way less painful waiting for results than it has been in previous elections. I guess like everybody else, I do have a few comments I think to think about, at least as far as the sign piece goes. One, I don't know if I'm ready to accept a recommendation that really isn't defining some of the things that's talked about at this point. So we're talking about, only being placed in designated areas, but we're not actually identifying where those designated areas are necessarily going to be at this point. And I think given that the next election isn't for another 4 years, I think this is one that we have some time that we can maybe shelf the discussion for the time being and maybe bring it back as we get either a little closer to the next election, middle of the term, something along those lines. Just right now, it's probably a little bit of a sore wound for most of us sitting at the table, and probably a little bit of a PTSD for yourself, Dawn. And I don't mean to sort of negate that term to some extent, but it's just fresh in everybody's minds right now. And realistically, in 4 years from now, once everybody's in that mode again, the conversation may look a lot different for people at that time than it does right now. So I think holding off on this one would be prudent for the time being. And, we may want to even look to some best practices coming from some other communities about how they're doing things and what else is out there. Because really it's one of the only mechanisms that councillors have as getting ways, getting advertising out there that's not cost prohibitive. I know I actually talked with somebody that owns the sign corridor along the highway about potentially utilizing one of the spaces for a sign. And, it was going to cost almost double what I spent on just the signs that I did get. So we have to keep in mind that, we're all doing this out of our own pockets as far as the election signage goes. And I mean, some people are obviously willing to spend a lot more than others on signage. But I think when it comes down to it, it could be a little bit handcuffing for people too. So just want to be cautious. That's all.
And the one reason why there wasn't a whole bunch of details is we'd actually have to do a bylaw on this, because it would be an amending bylaw to our zoning bylaw. So it was just kind of thrown out there for conversation at this time. And if it was something we decided to go ahead with, we would actually do up a bylaw, and it would have a map with everything on it showing where the signs would be able to be located and that type of stuff. There'd be a lot more detail put into it because it would be an amending bylaw to our zoning bylaw.
Good. And any other questions? One other one that I would add to that is the time frame that signs can be out. So that they definitely disappear quickly after an election, but when can they actually start going in would be, we don't have a set date. So I think it would be nice to have a common day that this is when you can put your signs out. It's probably when their nominations are there, but there's nothing saying that.
Yeah.
Councillor Ramage.
Thanks, Mayor Philipchuk. Just to add to that, the one question I had about from some people was, what is the permissible size of a sign within city limits? So I think if there's some best practices or what other cities are allowing for lawn signs and the size of those, that would be interesting information as well.
Okay. Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we are moving down to Public Works. I don't see any break in here, but should be okay.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My report includes updates and information dating back to September, when we still had rainfall and prior to the snow. I guess sidewalk repair, road repair, backlight cleanup, quite a bit has happened since then. And we were actually in the middle of winterizing as well when the snowstorm hit. We had fortunately most of our equipment prepared and ready to go, as well as salt and sand just before the storm hit. And also staff, additionally, we've had some challenges with COVID, and staff have had to, if someone is ill in the family, they take recommendations of 811 and stay home until they test negative. So just before the storm, we had a staff member or two that could return back to work. So we had 11 of us, with the exception of one of the staff members, on short term. able to do long shifts and work, myself, supervisors included, work with that storm. Fall lagoon draining went well. Most utilities with gas monitors, both fixed and handheld. Everything was found to be in good working order, sent for inspections as well as lanyards. We haven't received those back yet. AECOM has begun some preliminary test hole drilling at along the railway tracks there and at our lagoon and holding pond. So some research has started on that lagoon expansion. Traffic lights, boy, those are a challenge. We've had a few lights go down. We've had them repaired, and then just to have them fail again with a bad wire. I understand. I called last week again to see where it's at, and we should be having parts arrive soon and installed, hopefully within the next week. We have approached the City of Saskatoon. We heard that Martensville was signing an agreement to have their lights maintained. So we've inquired as well regarding those traffic lights, and hopefully that's something that we can do and have maintenance on a continual basis and more inventory, so we don't have to wait 7-8 weeks for some of these parts. Christmas lights, we were able to get those up as well. Storm drainage, we have finally winterized after the snowfall. We did winterize all of our storm drainage, and we were able to train a few of our staff. That's about it for an update right now. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Hi, Jason.
Hi.
Congratulations on the job well done with the snow removal. I am very happy. It was nice watching the snow crews go like a well-oiled machine. So being shorthanded, good job. A couple things I was wondering that you said that the one company that you use for gravel and sand, did you get money back, or will they deliver the sand when they're back on schedule? And yeah, go ahead.
That company, we hadn't ordered any gravel sand from them yet, so it's
okay.
Yep. So there's no reimbursement required there because they never brought any sand out. We just, as we're waiting for them, they called us and said, "Okay, now we're ready to go." And we said, "Actually, we've signed an agreement with somebody else. We're not signed with a verbal agreement. We've gone with another company, and we are actually saving some money doing that." So.
Excellent. Okay, and my next question was regarding the traffic lights. So you mentioned that you will be there's a draft or a report going to the City of Saskatoon Council meeting today. Is that still on track, or how far are you along with the process there?
So that process is City of Saskatoon takes it to their council with a recommendation, we'll see where it goes from there. Once if they say yes, that's something that we can do. We thought we'd just follow along with what the agreement was established with Martensville. So that's very recent with Martensville as well. I'm not even sure if they even started that contract or not. And they would take that contract to City Council. And if Saskatoon agrees to enter that agreement with us, then we would as well be able to take that to our council and then see where things go from there. But they also have a large inventory available right in Saskatoon. To maintain these traffic lights, you need to be an electrician, and you need to have courses and programming as well. So we were using our local contractor that won the bid to put up the lights by Pebble Beach Boulevard. They installed those, but they also hired the same gentleman that we are the same company, GTD, to do the traffic maintenance. He does the programming on it. The company that installed the lights, they do not. So they also hired the same gentleman. So they're working together now to maintain our lights. But it is time consuming, and we have to wait for parts, and travel has to come from Regina. So there's some travel costs there as well.
Okay. And then one last question. I was just wondering, like with the contract with the City of Saskatoon, is there an option for training or another business locally or some kind of co-op between us and Martensville for that maintenance contract at some point to train and build capacity here?
That I'm not sure on at this point. It's very preliminary. It's a contract that Martensville has with Saskatoon, so I imagine our contract will be separate, but follow the same line. So we would have the same similar agreement. but I don't know if there'd be a benefit to maintaining both because it would be both through Saskatoon, so it'd be essentially the same contract. Training the staff here, we would have to have electrical person on staff to train here, and there wouldn't be enough work for an electrician probably to be on our staff, possibly through the maintenance department, but then they would also have to go through substantial training to have the programming ability for the traffic lights. So the agreement with the city of Saskatoon might be more beneficial than to have one personnel who we wouldn't be able to probably give enough work to keep them busy full time. It'd be a part-time position.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tooley.
Thank you, Jason. I actually think it's really quite prudent that we're looking at some solutions with something like the city of Saskatoon. When we're sort of looking at that economies of scale sort of thing, you know, what's in Warman and Martinsville, for example, are really pale in comparison to what they have in Saskatoon. And I know they have a fairly large inventory of traffic lights there. And if we can sort of work with one of our, you know, neighboring partners and, you know, have a situation where the services that they have, it doesn't mean that we're duplicating those services for really what would be a small amount of work. And, you know, I do know that there's been a lot of frustration with the amount of time that we've had to wait and sort of that waiting game to have traffic lights fixed. So I think it's actually a really positive direction to be moving. So I appreciate it myself. Thank you.
Other comments? Councillor Seed.
Jason, I understand that it's very preliminary with City of Saskatoon. Is your gut feeling, though, this is something that the people you've spoken to feel that they, would have an appetite to take on or would like to pursue with council? Because quite often their recommendation, obviously, is just going to be rubber stamped.
Yes, the outcome right away was pretty positive when I emailed them. So no, I think I'm positive and hopeful that it's going to turn out and that we can have a similar agreement and move forward that way. I'm hopeful.
Awesome. And then to echo what Tracy said, and I'm sure you've heard it 100 times, but it's always nice to hear it again. Certainly appreciate you and your staff making Warman still the undisputed champions for street clearing. So we definitely appreciate it, man. It was a monumental task. And I think, though, even though some people will never do anything but complain, it was extremely well done. We're quite proud of what you and your crew did.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'll pass it on to the staff as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Ramage.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'll echo those comments. Fantastic job with the snow clearing. Just kind of along that line, can you speak towards the maintenance and storage requirements for the equipment and what your facility capacity is at? This kind of speaks a little bit ahead in the agenda, but I think it's there's some value in having that quick discussion on this here.
Yes, well, I referenced in the report to try and put in perspective. 2008, we received our second grader, and I believe I don't know the exact numbers, but I believe the population was somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000. And since then, we did not have the extended bay we do now, where we store our two graders in. And now with a population of 12,500 or 13,000, we still only have those two graders. We do have the bay now that we can store the two machines inside. But that's about it. We're full to capacity. By those numbers, I suppose we should have another couple pieces of machinery and another two staff members to run them. And so the cost would be substantial to have those staff and equipment and maintenance and the shop extension. We're kind of growing out of the space here. I think we can extend it here to some degree by adding on, removing the steel Quonset and adding on space there. And but we may have to look at the possibly the snow service we give. We may have to look at trying to adjust. I know we all put a lot of extra hours in, and we did have contractors assist us with this big storm. It was an unprecedented storm since, I think, 2007, the biggest one. So it is exceptional. We did have contractor help. I think it's the snow pile is the highest I've ever seen, and the invoice from the contractors will be as well. But we are coming to a point. I believe we'll have to look at our options for equipment, storage, and staffing.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason. Now, again, I had a couple questions. First of all, a good comment that I'd forward to you an email from some seniors about the walking availability for them, and they were very happy with all that was done, and I forwarded that to Jason. So easy being the mayor when you're getting those types of emails sent to you, and you get to forward those off to staff, and I did do that. I sort of almost a little bit of what Councillor Ramage had mentioned, but a little bit different vantage point is, do we have secured the contractors? Like, I mean, this was a high demand. They could have gone south to Saskatoon or to Martinsville. Why did they come to Warman? Do we have that in place? Was that sort of something that we always have in place? And is that those demands, like how often do we use contractors on a regular year, not a Snowmageddon year, I guess, because I think there's that balance too, because the less you have to have as far as city employees and storage and your own equipment, if you can contract it out, is there's that balance? And I guess it's another vantage point of looking at it. So how secure are the people that we got?
Well, we've been fortunate with being approached by contractors every year. We have not used contractors a whole lot, very minimal over the last few years, because we have our 3 single axle trucks and we have our snowblower. We can do the most of the snow removal ourselves. It hasn't been large volumes. But what I always told the contractors that did approach me was, please just email me a list with prices for the year, and if we need you, we'll give you a call. So we kind of chatted with them a little bit here prior to the storm. So we had one contractor who was able to help us out right away. And our developer also have offered some services. They're also contracted some machinery, and they could help us out quite quickly, but they have their own responsibilities too to maintain. And then as the storm continued there, I did have people contact me with more equipment and offering more services. So we did have some contractors lined up, but we're fortunate to have people wanting to come work for us.
Okay, and where are they based out of? So where is the equipment coming from?
So the great thing is it is local. It's local contractors. DC Trenching is one of them. They've worked for us, providing some repair for hydrants, water main repairs, service connections, that kind of thing. And they have a business right here in Warman. K&H as well. They are right here in Warman. We had Phrase Concrete, had a few trucks and loader, helped us out, again, part of Warman taxpayers. One contractor was offering a service. He is not from here, he's from another town, single truck operator. He needed work really bad, so he was able to work for us. So he's not from town. We did have others, both local and out of town, offering services, but we did have a lot of local contractors working for us.
Okay, great. Okay, good. It's just a different vantage point that I want to sort of recognize, that you were able to get contractors when Saskatoon was putting out on Twitter they wanted people, whoever. So I thought that we already had ours in place, which was great to see. So thanks for your work on that. Councillor C.
Just real quick, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that through the EMO, we also have contracts that are in place with contractors to provide equipment in the effect that the EMO is activated for, as I love the term, Snowmageddon. But we do have existing contracts in place with some of them when there is a local state of emergency declared, do we not?
Yep, if there is a list, there's a booklet there with names in that book ready to go if need be.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Councillor Brown.
Jason, in your report there, I'm going to change the conversation off the snow, and I'm going to go to the back alley cleanup. So with this year, you certainly note that we had an increase of volume here in the fall, likely due to not having one there in the spring. I'm wondering, like, do you have any quantitative values in terms of how much of an increase here that we had? Like, I don't know, was it double or and that kind of thing? And also with this year, could you also comment on the partnership that we have with BN Metals, and whether or not they were able to to be of assistance with the elevated volume?
Yeah, so with BN Metals, essentially we have the bins, steel bins at our shop, they deliver 2 bins here, and then we just fill them and they pick them up. So they had no problem keeping up and emptying those bins. And usually we can finish our fall cleanup early in every section. This time we were left to work those full days with the cleanup. And I did have numbers, and I don't have them in front of me right now, but I believe it was about another third of much of trash or back cleanup metal and everything. It was a substantial amount. It was a noticeable amount, I guess, but still manageable within that time limit.
Okay. So, so certainly with this being, let's say, like one of those years where we only had one cleanup, I'm wondering, with the degree of success here that we have, and with this year, like obviously with this year, like I guess I'm looking at our service lines in general for the back alley cleanup. Would you recommend, still keeping the spring and fall, or transitioning over to one? Now, and there again, I'm just looking at future budgetary considerations on this. Thank you.
Well, the way things went this year, I would say I think it might be a cost saving, and we could do one. It's an exceptional year with the COVID. Did some folks not clean out? Would we, on a normal year, if we just do one? It's hard to say. I definitely think there might be a cost saving there. If we only did it once a year, it'd be a saving on staff. Spring is a very busy time for a lot of other things, and maybe just do a fall cleanup. Everyone can assess where they're at, and then put out at the end of the year. Just kind of, they would have to store it throughout their summer months. So it's something that we talked about it here as well at the shop, and it might be something to consider if we can manage in that same time frame and just do it once a year. There's definitely a cost saving there.
Anything else? That is it. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
I think what we're going to do is take a break. The agenda got turned around a bit here. I'm going to say till 3:25. So 11-minute break here, 3:25. If we can all be back, okay?
Can you hear me, Brad?
Yes, I can.
It's a good time to call a 2-minute warning.
Okay, I have 3:25, so we'll reconvene. And thanks to the city clerk for turning off my mic so we didn't have a TikTok moment. And we'll move to our planner, Manager Tove.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk, members of council. A good chunk of my report is for information today. I have provided some updated permit numbers to December 2nd, 2020.
You're froze up there, Brad. We'll just wait for Brad here, or Bob will take over.
Not sure if he was froze up or if we're just bringing up the.
I think he froze up.
Oh, okay.
We'll just wait for him.
Sorry about that. I'll start again. So a good chunk of my report is for information today. I have provided updated permit numbers. You'll notice single family, we're doing quite well in comparison to last year and kind of with the environment currently out there. We're still a little lower in our commercial values, just basically dependent on the scale of some of the projects that were completed last year compared to this year. But overall, considering the year that we've had with COVID and everything else, we're having a fairly good year permit-wise. In terms of the real estate numbers that I typically provide on a monthly basis, I'm going to be providing kind of a year-end summary in January. Just with the time of year and stuff, I was having some trouble getting updated numbers, and I figured the comparison would probably be more useful for council's information. Just included a discretionary use, which I'll be bringing to council for discussion on Monday. It's a fairly standard one for the south end. I think a good fit and no major concerns from planning in terms of parking or any of the other requirements required under the City of Warman zoning bylaw. The next item is the facilities portfolio review. So just I guess what we're looking to do with this facilities portfolio review is just provide a little bit of an update to the current council. There's a few of you who weren't on council when we initially discussed this. We wanted to kind of bring everyone back to the initial starting point, I guess, that we ended off with council in September when council deferred this item till December, January, when the new council was present. So basically, we've provided all of the kind of background information. I've included the two reports. There's an internal, or what we were looking at as an internal report, and then kind of the executive summary public report. That would be kind of the document that we would show to the public, or that would be publicly available. And right now, I guess we're just sending this to council for some discussion, maybe some question and answer, and kind of see where you want to take this with next steps. Then I've just provided my typical kind of bylaw enforcement citywide report, and I've done that for the months since the last committee of the whole in September. So I've included 3 reports for council's information. And then finally, City Manager Smith did send out some extra information this morning just regarding the intersection at Clubhouse Boulevard and First Avenue, as I know there was some discussion at council, again, kind of the same as the facilities portfolio, wanting to bring everyone back to kind of that initial stage or where we've left that off with the previous council, just so that we can begin discussion if there's any new direction that the new council wishes us to take or anything new that that council would like us to look at. So kind of provided a mouthful there, but I thought I'd just kind of give a quick summary of the whole report and then come back for kind of question and answer, and we can kind of work our way back through.
And I'll just, before I get going, I'm just going to mention that Councillor Peterson is listening. He's unable to get the video going right now, but he is a part of the meeting right now. Okay. Oh, there he goes. Okay, Councillor Ramage. You're mute.
There we go. Thanks, Mayor Philipchuk. At this time, we had discussed that that I might go through and do a summary of the facilities portfolio plan. Is that still still the intention that we'd like to move forward with.
Is there, I guess, is there questions right now? And Manager Toth, do you want him to go through it right now? Is that?
I'm not sure if we better use of time would be maybe to start off with the questions and answers and see kind of where it takes us, or, if there's significant questions, or, I guess kind of leave it up to you in terms of if you think better that we get the kind of summary first, question and answer second, or vice versa.
Okay. I think, you know what, I think it probably wouldn't hurt to give a summary. Now, we've been given all the information. So I think there's two reports, that executive report. I'm sure everybody's read that one. The long 100-page plus one, hopefully people have that as a reference more than anything. It's one of those ones that I think from a council side, it's really leading us into that next part with our next strategic planning on, to appreciate the guidance and, the future needs in the areas of, City Hall, Public Works, Recreation, RCMP. So I think those things are there in place. Anything that you sort of want to globally say about it? Because I think detail-wise, we can go from there. So I'll turn it over to you, Doug, to anything you want to add as sort of a global view of it.
Sure. Okay. So just a brief background on this. So I had actually submitted a proposal on this back in December, just for some context here, and this was awarded in February, and the project finished up in July. Brad had mentioned that the council at the time wanted to defer and bring it to the new council, so I would have otherwise been presenting in September prior to the election on this report. So recognizing that we're kind of in this period, I'm kind of taking my counselor hat off and for a moment, and more of the consultant that worked on the project in the spring hat back on, just for some clarity on that. Overall, the facility portfolio plan was intended to be a high-level review of the city's facility sizes and comparing that to similar municipalities. Went through a process of identifying a number of different communities that seem to have some similarities with the city of Warman. Overall, we looked at this the space, this building space, the land area, and to meet the administrative and operations needs. You'll find in the report that it mentions that City Hall is nearing capacity, Public Works is at or over capacity, whereas Parks and Recreation, their office space is generally seen as sufficient, but looking at some opportunities to expand their maintenance and storage facilities. And again, this is all based off of looking at other municipalities. So this wasn't done to a micro level of looking at space per person or operating space. It really was on a comparison. Further through the report, it looks at some location options that if other facilities were to be built where that makes sense. Generally, there was 3 areas that were identified. One would be a community hub, which would look at groupings of facilities for recreation, civic services, and businesses. And this is envisioned as being at the intersection of Clubhouse and Centennial. There's the Main Street corridor along Central Street, which would look at civic services and balancing access of services for those that live and work in the South Warman area. And then there is the South Industrial area that's generally well suited for maintenance or public works yards. One of the challenges identified in the locations options is that the impact of moving civic services north towards the community hub and what that impact that would have on service delivery for those that live and work in the South Warman area. The report goes and looks at a phased approach, identifying different facilities. The reason for the phased approach is the population that we were working towards in the report of 30,000 people may not happen for 20 to 40 years, depending on the variability in how quickly the community grows. To fit more within a 10-year capital plan and to phase that in incrementally, this was seen as a positive way to be more cost efficient while meeting the space needs. It looks at the report also looks at some strategic alignment with city policy, including the official community plan and the zoning bylaw. It also considers factors such as safety, expansion potential, accessibility, and compatibility. Near the end of the large report, it looks at a priority ranking and a risk ranking as a way of determining which facility may be needed on a first basis, or which one would be required for the city first before others. And in the very last part within the capital plan, it does identify, it's highlighted as creating a facility reserve within the capital plan as a means to start putting money away to build out the facility plan. So I think I'll leave it at that as a summary, as there is quite a bit of detail within the report, and then just turn it back over for any questions if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you for that. And again, that's high level, but the details are there for people as they want to peruse through the full document that's there. Okay. I guess questions overall. Anything else to add to your report there, Brad?
No, sorry. Sorry, no, I think I pretty much summed it up. Again, it was a kind of a quick summary, but definitely if any questions or answers, I can try and help you out.
Okay, and questions, I guess. Councillor C.
Brad, just one quick question for you with regards to the discretionary use. Obviously saw the letter that was written by the gentleman that is basically testing viscosity of lubricants at that location. Just a real, there wasn't much information in his information on the unit besides a YouTube video. So just a couple of questions that I had that I wanted to see if we could get some clarity on is, one, are there any specific decibels or safeguards associated with this machine? Like, it doesn't look like it's going to be a machine that's going to be shaking the ground around it, but at the end of the day, I would like to ensure that there isn't anything over what are considered to be the normal 184 decibels for industrial equipment. And secondly, I understand that with testing the viscosities of fluids, quite often, this is something I have a lot of experience with, and quite often companies like this are going through extremely high volumes of industrial lubricants, particularly hydraulic and anti-wear hydraulic oils. So my concern would be to see what safeguards he would also have in place to ensure the safe storage, containment, and any other necessary permits specifically required by the fire department to ensure that he's, if he is, in fact, storing large volumes of hydraulic fluids, because they're a highly flammable liquid. And just want to make sure that we have the proper containment so they're not going down the drain and also not causing any undue hardships for other businesses around him. So if we get some clarification from him, from the business owner on that, specifically with, like I say, decibel ratings and amount of fluid, I would be curious to see that.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely. We've already had a conversation with him about the levels of sound, and we do have kind of a general topic, I guess, we bring up with the noxious stuff. That being said, I'll get some specifics and put it on my council report for Monday so that you got that information before you make the decision.
Perfect. Thank you very much. The other thing I was just going to mention, and this is just more for the Firebird report. Obviously there's some questions that I have, but I don't feel that there's something that should be done in camera, just because of specific land locations. So I have some questions for that, but I hope that we'll just have an opportunity either at the end of this or in the near future to ask some of those questions, please, Gary.
Yes. Okay, that sounds good. And I understand. And that may even be a good one to carry over to next Monday, and then we can have an opportunity at that time.
Yeah, I for one read the entire 97 pages and was wondering who wrote such a report. And then I saw a certain Ramage signature on it. So I made sure I called yesterday.
Thank you. Other questions? I just have one, sorry, I'll guess I'll ask mine quickly too. It is a little bit about the discretionary use, but it's more a little bit about the excitement of possibility of high paying jobs and opportunities, and maybe collateral businesses that maybe they would need or could potentially be in that area, that how can we help facilitate those types of things along the way? I guess I was doing a little bit of looking into it and just saying, okay, this is coming, but what do they need to have beside them or near them that would make this so we can develop more and more and more to sort of hit our targets of trying to create jobs within our community. And from what I see, engineers and chemists are probably a part of this. So fairly good to have as catalysts for more things along the way.
Yeah, and we did look at it as maybe something, well, obviously it's something new that we hadn't had in Warman yet. Something that seems fairly technical in nature. I will have a discussion with them when I'm getting some of the details for some of the other questions that were brought up today, and I'll bring some of that information again back during my council report on Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Just in terms of some of the auxiliary businesses that may be of a help to them.
Yeah, that we can start targeting and reaching out to and saying that we have this potentially, or and then open up opportunities. Okay, Councillor Beck.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. So I do have a question here. You do mention the North Concept Plan. So obviously, like, this is in conjunction with the P4G group that we're certainly involved with. So I've got a question. With this year, like, obviously, like we're certainly delayed in terms of getting that report. You've identified that. With looking into some of the technicalities behind that, with this year, it does say that we are waiting for the for the Saskatoon highway, or let's say freeway project, prior to that coming forward. So looking into that, they're still in their environmental assessment stage. So like, there again, I guess we don't know exactly how far along that they are in that process. What kind of timelines are you expecting? And let's say, what kind of impacts is that going to have on P4G and the region going forward?
Yeah, so we're anticipating that we should have a draft document fairly early in the new year. We're thinking February-ish for review. It's actually, I guess it's kind of being, I shouldn't say held up, but taking a little bit longer for some of the work around the transportation and servicing side to take place. And that's being done by P4G. Decided to go with this new group out of the city of Saskatoon that basically acts as kind of a consultant group. And we saw some kind of cost savings and synergies there with just what's taking place with the P4G. But currently right now, there's a bit of a holdup just on the transportation and servicing side as they work out some of the details around some of that. And some of that information will be forthcoming fairly early. And we're hoping for that draft report fairly early in the new year. Once we had the draft report, it would kind of go through that P4G committee structure, and then eventually would make it back to our council table for review and discussion.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Ramage?
Thank you, Mayor Philip. Chuck, just to kind of echo your comments, I think that discretionary use application is really encouraging in terms of high-paying jobs, tech. I think Warman has a lot to offer that industry, but I would also echo some of Councillor Seed's comments that that the application is currently very light. Do we know are there any additional municipal services? I assume that there's enough power available. Do we understand any of the hazards associated with the operations or any ventilation requirements? I'm not as familiar with the work that's being done as Councillor Seed, but just some of the questions that I would have on something like this.
Yeah, so typically when we're reviewing an application like this, obviously first and foremost focus is, does the use fit the zoning? Once we kind of determine that, and if it can be approved through a discretionary use, then we kind of work through some of the details, number of employees, parking stalls, and then kind of eventually working our way into noise, odor, disposal of materials, outdoor storage, those kinds of questions. When we kind of went through the list with the applicant, no major red flags in terms of anything that they were proposing. And in addition, when we do approve the discretionary use, part of our approval includes conditions that obviously the applicant's responsibility to make sure that they're meeting all provincial, environmental, any other guidelines that might be pertinent to the development. So although we do ask kind of the question generally in nature, in terms of disposal, noise, smell, noxious chemicals, at the end of the day, we're not qualified to review a lot of the technical side of those things. And so we basically condition the approval based on the fact that they know they're responsible to get any sort of additional approvals that they may be required to get.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I have some other questions that are coming out of those comments, but I'll take some time to sort through those, and I'll have other questions at another time. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Councillor Beck, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, with this here, I guess I just wanted to say that with this here, I do have a couple of questions around bylaws, so I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to move on first, but it looks like there's other planning questions, so I don't want to change topics too soon.
Okay. Councillor Peterson?
My question's about bylaw as well.
Okay, let's go with the bylaw question. Well, okay, Councillor Peterson, since you're on, you might as well go with the bylaw question.
Okay. I remember some time ago we had brought forth change in the bylaw around utility trailers and the tradespeople and that, and specifically around them leaving their trailers out on streets for, when there's construction projects and that. And then I brought home a trailer that I had borrowed from someone one night after work and had it attached to the truck as I was going to take it back to them the next morning, and got a notice myself. And I'm just wondering if maybe in the intent we had of that bylaw, if we went a little overboard on what we did with it, because in the notice I got is that if you have it attached to the truck, it has to be off the street at all. There's no grace period whatsoever. And I think that's a little beyond the intent or at least I thought we had when we passed that in the first place.
So the way the bylaw currently works is any trailers that are of a recreational nature can be on the street for 48 hours. The ones that are required to be moved in 2 hours or can stay at the site through the day if there's construction are any sort of construction or utility type trailers. And typically, I guess the way we use to determine which is basically based on if a trailer has advertising for that business on it. Typically we will, or if it has heavy equipment on it, that wouldn't be used. But I mean, if we see a skidoo trailer, obviously an RV or something like that, we treat it differently than a covered trailer that has decals on the side advertising a construction company, for example. And those are the two different, I guess, types of trailers that we look at. And like I said, the one under the current bylaw is required to be moved in 2 hours, and the other one has 48.
Okay. The one that I had on my truck at the time was a skidoo trailer that just happens to have someone's decals on it for her realty business. And like I said, I think it's a little overboard, and I think it's maybe something we might want to look at when, someone is bringing it home one night intending to move it the next day, and 2 hours is, I think, unreasonable in that.
I mean, we definitely have heard, both sides, and like most bylaw issues, there's kind of 50% of people on kind of either side of the equation or the question. I guess the intent is we do have a lot of contractors who either work out of their home or have home offices, and we have run into issues before. A lot of these trailers are quite large, where they do take up quite a bit of on-street parking, and I know that's where a lot of the intent came behind the initial bylaw. But in terms of heavy-handed, we always do typically start with a warning in these situations. So, if there is a situation where it's a mistaken identity or the trailer isn't used for commercial purposes, usually that's found out after that warning's given, because they'll either call myself or Wade, and then, we'll rectify that moving forward. But, we're not typically going in guns a-blazing to neighborhoods and issuing tickets to every trailer we see either. So we do take a bit of a cautious approach that way.
Yeah. No, I just wonder though if maybe we may need to look at this again, because like I said, 2 hours I think for this, and it wasn't a trades decal on it, it was a realtor's decal on it. So I think, but just in general speaking though, 2 hours might be a little bit on the harsh side for that.
Yeah, and definitely comments well received. We can bring it up for conversation sake the next time we look at some amendments to the zoning bylaw.
Okay. And thanks for clarifying the spirit of it there, Brad, because I think that a lot of it is sort of taken care of in that way. Councillor Beck.
Certainly interesting, because with this year, I did have a comment on parking, and then also another one in terms of reporting. So I guess I'll start off with the parking one first. Certainly one of the things here that I did notice is for each of the 3 month stats that were provided is, certainly the number of warnings out there for parking. And it certainly looks like the parking enforcement definitely takes up a lot of our, certainly a lot of our bylaw enforcement time and effort and whatnot. And I was actually, going to pose the question as to whether or not we actually needed to be a little bit more forceful with some of our warning systems, just because, 30 plus, warnings, for each reporting period. And, this year, there again, the number of tickets in relation to that is actually quite low. So I was just wondering if maybe our standards were a little bit too lax in terms of what our parking enforcement penalties are, to maybe bring greater compliance. So I suppose I'm on a little bit of the other side of the coin there to the earlier comments provided. So I guess that would be one question out there. But with this year, regarding the actual fines reported for collected year to date, and even throughout the month, with this year, I would just kind of ask whether or not it would be possible to provide the total balance outstanding for fines levied that haven't been collected yet. So, I just think that would be a reporting tool that would certainly help us along. Because there again, when we see the number of penalties, and that kind of thing, but there again, only a small fine collected, it's really disproportionate to what might fully be outstanding there. So, I'd ask if that could be a change that you'd be able to implement for things going forward, Brad. And certainly, I do understand that is, let's say perhaps a little bit more work, but I just think that the reporting would just be that much better.
Yeah, so in terms of that, that's an easy answer. Yes, we can do that. That's not a ton of work at all. By all means, we'll have that on the next report. In terms of your first question, and I guess just a quick comment that, historically, council has kind of directed us in terms of education over enforcement, where we can look at that as an option. And I will say, since November's hit with the snow, we always kind of take a bit more of a, I don't want to say lax approach, but we want to give people warnings after a change in the environment or what we're looking at. So for example, after the big snow, the first one where we're trying to get cars moved off the street, you would definitely hear from it if we went in and kind of wrote everyone tickets that we give warnings to in those situations. Again, just because it's a change in the year, people aren't quite used to snow removal and kind of the way it happens and when their cars need to be off the street. So we just take a bit more of an education approach, I guess, in those situations rather than enforce. But I think the penalties are adequate where they are at. I guess, we could look at, getting rid of that first warning or going straight to a ticket situation. But historically, what we've done is a warning, and then if it happens again, the same person ticket.
Thank you. Councillor C.
Something I was actually just brought to my attention today, and Brad, so I'm not looking for necessarily a specific answer right now because I don't want to, it's unfair when you can't have the information in front of you. But I did more of a question than anything, I guess. I had a citizen contact me that had let me know that they had actually faced a lot of criticism on social media because they were clearing one of the ponds in Warman and prepping it as a skating rink. And this person, the concern that they had was largely brought on because this person is a very experienced outdoorsman and actually went out to the pond by his house with an auger and checked ice thicknesses, finding it to be, according to his numbers, 10 inches, 12 inches, and 10 inches on the 3 spots that he checked. More than sufficient to have a person walking on, even by provincial standards. And what he actually found is that after he had cleared it off and had even flooded it a little bit for a rink, he had a bylaw officer stop by. And the bylaw officer told him to get off the rink immediately. And he had explained that, this is what I've done. This is my understanding of it. And this is why I believe I can be here. And he was very open-ended, commented, get off the ice or else. And was very confrontational with the gentleman. And now again, 3 sides to every story. But he said, get off or else what? What's going to happen?
Okay, I think we don't have to get into the specifics of that. We can just stay to the facts of that person went on there, because I think that's hearsay for right now. Okay.
That's what I'm getting at, though. Is I would like to know is, do we have the specifics? The Warman Fire Department recommends 12 inches of ice, which I have seen. Do we have a specific bylaw and or policy with residents being on the ice? And Russ obviously popped up there. So I would just like to see if we could have some clarity on that so that I can share it with this individual.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in and then Russ kind of after if there's anything to add. So we do have a policy. I guess, first of all, the city owns all of the storm retention ponds, and even our own insurer has requirements in terms of what they'll deem acceptable to mitigate risk with liability. And although, anyone with an outdoors background or ice fishes or those kinds of things knows 12 inches is more than sufficient to hold a human being on ice. Our policy or internal policy, in conjunction with discussions with insurance and everyone else, requires the 12 inches. So the fire department does the testing for us based on the policy, and under the policy, it's the fire department's job. They drill 3 holes per kind of ice surface. And if those 3 holes are kind of over the 12 inches, then we bag up the signs that say danger thin ice around the lakes and allow it. But until that 12-inch threshold is met, we will leave the signs unbuilt. In terms of bylaw, I won't get into any of the specifics about that situation, but we have directed bylaw to do it as an advisory type situation. I mean, under the policy, we cannot issue tickets or fines for people being on that ice. So it's more, again, in that educational kind of viewpoint of, we understand that with your experience, you might know better, but under our policy, unfortunately, we can't support this kind of use of the ice at this level. So the intent is not to go in there and, I guess, raise too many alarm bells. It's more just to educate.
Okay, our City Manager Smith, if you want to comment, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, maybe just before Russ, and I guess I certainly appreciate people that are knowledgeable on ice and ice safety, including the fire department, etc. But fortunately or unfortunately, other people, when somebody makes ice and makes it available on a public property, others like to use it and should be available to use it. And they may not be as experienced as the gentleman you spoke of, but again, those are just some of the issues that we deal with. I know they're experienced and they have, some further information that maybe we do or our insurers do or the fire chief has. But I think it's important to know that it's not just that individual that would go on there knowing that stuff and how to be safe on ice. So just a comment.
Chief Austin?
Got to hit the magical unmute button. Yeah, so I was made aware this particular person has also called myself. Bob and Brad have hit it right on the head. This particular location, I'm not going to get into all the specifics, but Let's just go back a little bit. Regionally in the area, it used to be that 8 inches used to be the number. As bylaws came in and as insurance providers changed what their expectations were, and I can't speak for Paul, but I believe when he was putting the numbers together for our policy, it was our insurers that asked for 12 inches. Just the way that the legal end of it goes. I can tell you that Saskatoon was up until this year still at 8 inches. That's what their fire department tests to. I believe their insurer has now asked them to change it to 10, but that's not confirmed. All of their policy all still says 10. Our neighbors in Martinsville, the fire department checks the ice until it hits 10 inches and then they stop checking. So that's we're kind of in the bailiwick right there. This particular, where this particular piece of ice is, where they're making the rink, is Traditions Pond South, closest to Clubhouse Boulevard. We were there when they were flooding, and we tested it right outside their rink at 7 inches. So with flooding, it's possible that they've got it up to 9-ish or so inches. But the other end of that pond, on the east end of that pond, was where we found 4 inches. So it's not, there's no one size fits all, I guess, as far as ponds go. And for those of you who saw our social media, when we went out and tested, you could see the footprints when one of our firefighters was going out. And then there's another footprint that if you zoom in, you can actually see weeds on the bottom. That was me. I went through at Crystal Springs about 20 feet out, and I went right through to my knee when we were going out to test. And yet, and of course, we're in threes and we have safety equipment, and that's why we do what we do. My other firefighter went a different direction, ran into no slush ice, and he measured it at 9.5 inches, just 50 feet away. So it is variable. Certainly, if Mayor and Council wanted to look at changing it, I think the insurance piece would be the first part to look at to see liability-wise where you want to draw that line. But if Mayor and Council need any more information as far as ice depths and what other communities are doing or whatever to make an informed decision, I'd be happy to do that for you.
Corley, did you have anything to add, or?
No, that was about it. I had the policy out. I was ready to go about it. So. Okay,
thank you. Councillor Seed.
Yeah, more than satisfied with the response by everybody. I appreciate it because it's again, it's the information from one source and being able to bring back again, the fact that you had tested and found 4 inches is more than enough concern for nobody to be on it. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a closing thought, I get it. People are COVID housebound. They want to get out. They want to do stuff. This weather isn't going to help it. We posted on our social media today just that on a -10 day with no snow on top of the ice, science says that we can get about 1.2 centimeters of good ice per day with perfect conditions at -10. It gets better after -10, but literally almost nothing happens below -10. So for the next week, we're not going to see any better ice.
Thank you. Thanks for all the input there. Other comments for Brad? Okay, thank you, Brad. We'll move on to recreation.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. You have in front of yourselves my report. Paul is still off, so you're stuck with me for a little bit longer yet. So just a couple things to highlight. I'll highlight kind of the 3 items, and then you guys can ask questions further to that. First one, effective November 27th, community groups were reduced to 8 people on 4 skills and fitness training only. Practices had to cease. We were very fortunate that we worked with our groups and they continued to go for the majority of them. So you can see in my report that we do have 38 groups that rent from us on a regular basis, and 24 of those groups had to reduce time or postpone altogether till the end of the month. But the remaining 14 groups actually make up 80% of our revenue for the time frame November 27th to December 18th. So as long as these groups continue to operate, we feel confident that we will be able to stay open and continue at this time. We have heard rumors that an announcement may be coming as early as this Friday regarding what will happen after the 17th. We can only hope for that so that we can have a couple days to plan prior to the Christmas break. If not, we will make changes on the fly if we have to. So I have attached for you the economic impact report that just shows kind of the original booking amounts, what's been reduced, and kind of where we're still sitting for revenue. We have had a couple groups look at the option of possibly a reduction in rate. I have spoken to those groups and let them know that we'll sort of assess that at the end of the year when we kind of see maybe they've picked up extra time, where are we sitting budget wise, because we don't want to have to lay off people because we've given everyone else a reduction, but we also don't want them to have to lay off their staff or to cease their operations for this time. Any groups in that report that you see highlighted in the orange yellow, those are the adult groups which were required to stop altogether at that time. So a reference of those. Due to COVID-19, Diamond Rodeo Arena saw Tina Rempel have to close her concession space. Even with the reduction in the rent that council approved for her earlier in the fall, she still had to close. She was only making maybe $100 a month. So at this time, she does still have a couple freezers and a fridge with items in it, and has sort of asked if she could leave some stuff in there. We have spoken to her about that regarding returning keys or the cost to operate those fridge and freezers. So we're just working out those details at this time. Additional to that, at the Diamond Rodeo Arena, KB Sports has requested a lease reduction of 60% till September of 2021. They normally, and I'm gonna find this email, where it is. They normally pay $400 plus GST from October to March and $200 plus GST from April to September. So I'll be bringing that to council for a decision on Monday as well. So you have the information there. And as well, Top Shelf Sports is scheduled to open here at the Legend Center January 1. With the uncertainty of hockey that's happening currently, they are asking for a 1-month delay basically to begin their lease, which would be February 1st. 2021. So attached is their letter as well in Appendix C. And the rest of the information, the rest of the report is there for information. So I open up for questions.
Okay, questions. Councillor Peterson.
Just a quick question. Not in the spirit of punishment or anything, but the spirit of we want to keep the doors open for as many rec people as possible. Is there any kind of on rec's part going out just to kind of monitor to make sure everyone's following the guidelines that are out there from the province?
Yes, so we do the best we can with our staff to monitor and make sure there's the 8 people that they're wearing their masks. We're continually asking people not to loiter in the lobbies, that they have to wait in their vehicle, come in only to pick up young children, to go directly to the areas that they need to be in, and directly back out of the vehicle. So we're doing our very best in the common areas, as well, you know, looking in upon those groups to ensure that they are following those guidelines as well.
Okay. Councillor Johnson.
I just wanted to say, good job, Corley. You guys and your staff are doing a great job with all these changes that are just kind of punching you in the face as we go. I do operate the small training sessions, and I can attest to everything that you are doing, that, you know, hockey practices are 8 and that they are ensuring masks. So good job. Bravo to you and your staff.
Thank you.
Councillor Seed.
Just a quick question with regards to KB Sports. As somebody that has children that are in hockey, I think that the staff has done a fantastic job of locking everything down and making sure everybody's keeping, and also parents, quite frankly, we're holding each other accountable, because if somebody screws up, we all suffer. So I think there's been good support on that. My question is that with KB Sports, as you had alluded to, Corley, they did already receive a 50% reduction in rent. Is that correct?
No, KB Sports has not yet received any reduction. That was Tina Rempel with the concession. KB has not yet asked for anything.
Okay, so I don't see how we wouldn't then, if we had extended this, it changes my whole perspective. If we had extended this to everybody else that was involved in both the Legends and the Diamond, I can't see why we wouldn't do it for the existing person. Of a concern that I have is both that I've heard from people, and also as a parent myself, is that even through the COVID pandemic and the fact that people are moving in and out quick, KB Sports is simply not open. When you go there, the doors are never open. It's not even, hey, we'll be open from 1 till 2 or 5 till 6 or anything. So I have a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth when somebody says I'm not able to make money but you'll never make money if your doors aren't open. So is there a clause also when we issue these rental agreements, if you will, that they need to be open for a minimum amount of time is a question that I have.
The one at the Diamond, I don't believe has a clause, but I would just need to double check that one for hours of operation. We have been working with KB Sports to get some more consistent hours open that we can publicize and let people know that he is there. A lot of times he does mention that anyone can give him a call on a cell phone if they need something, but we are working with him to try and get a more consistent hours of operation for him.
Yeah, I would argue that his number's not even on the door, right?
Yeah. In regards to the reduction, because we have given that to everyone else, just a point of note is that the other leases were only authorized to have reduction for 6 months, which was till January. KB Sports is asking for a reduction until September of 2021. So that's just something to consider as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ramage.
Coralie addressed my question right there. I was going to ask how this has been handled with other requests, but if it's been a 6 month period of time, then that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, and that'll be reevaluated at the end of January, I believe, is the plan. Yes. Councillor Beck.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, certainly, like regarding our lessees, like there again, when we had, let's say, discussed some of the changes that we were doing at the Legend Center and whatnot, with this year, like I think we wanted, or one of the things I guess that I was looking for was, let's say consistency across the board, and like there again, while we're willing to give, let's say breaks to one particular, lessee and whatnot, quite honestly, that there should be good policy for all of them out of that facility. So with this year, like I'm a little bit surprised to see and to hear that that KB Sports and also out of the Diamond Arena that that wasn't equally let's say applied out there. So I guess that would be one point is with this year, I mean, like I'd like to see a consistent approach to how we deal with our, with our lessees. I think it is very important, for us to, to be transparent and public with that. Also with this year, regarding the specific request here from KB Sports, they're again looking so far into the future, for that rent reduction, and there again, while I understand that, like the timelines are really, let's say unclear in terms of when, vaccines might actually be provided here in Saskatchewan and whatnot, that, that looking that far out is, is something that, I think we should really, take in, let's say like in smaller chunks. And, like I suppose I would be looking for a universal statement to all of our lessees that, that council is willing to look at each of these on a universal basis, and that kind of thing until, basically they can tell we're through this. I mean, like, to certainly be fair to everybody, like that consistent above board policy, I think is certainly necessary and something that I would like to portray to all of our lessees.
Thank you. Anything to comment to that, or we'll just go?
Just we've sort of been doing it on a case-by-case basis. So Pro Sport was the first one to approach us back in April. They worked with Josh and council and have a bit of a different agreement. So they took and they just deferred their rent. I believe started in September, and they deferred that rent from, I believe, April, May, June, July, and August, and spread it out over the following for the rest of their term. So I believe 18 months is what it was. And then further to that, the ones that were just approved back in the fall, those were by request. So not all of our lessees have still yet asked for a reduction at all. So Anytime Fitness is one that has not asked, and I don't believe Booster Juice has asked as well. So we're sort of just going it on as they ask.
Okay. Councillor Peterson?
Well, I hear what Councillor Beck has to say about, being fair to KB Sports and that. I also have some concerns based upon what Councillor Seed has said about them not being open. It's hard to justify giving them a rent reduction if they're never open there to take advantage of what opportunities there is for revenue. That in some respects, it almost sounds like a little, like, I mean,
I think, yeah, I think we
wanting
can
to
ask for a
rent
report.
reduction.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we can ask for a report from that, because I think, let's find out what he has to say about when he's been opened or not and go from there. I think that would be good information to go from that vantage point too.
Yeah.
That was going to be my suggestion, is we'll go back to him, and for council on Monday, I will have a report of the hours that he's been open since he opened this fall.
Okay, Councillor Tooley?
I think a couple things I want to want to talk about here for a moment. One, I'm hearing a little bit of a thought process coming from around the table that the thoughts there that we should maybe look at having sort of a uniform or a standard approach. We're going to treat some of our leases in some of our buildings. One of the things I think that we need to be really cognizant of is that the various restrictions that are coming and going, they're actually going to be different for different leases, and the impact for them is going to be different, especially as the province has different restrictions out there. Some might be impacted more than others, and some might not be impacted at all. Like 24-hour fitness, for example. Early on, they were impacted for a small time frame, but for the most part, they're operating. I'm not going to say business as usual, but they haven't had restrictions on essentially having their hours closed down. The other thing I want to be really mindful of is some of the programs that are available through the provincial or through the federal government. And I know early on we were getting indications or getting signals that because the leases that we have are in municipally owned buildings, some of the folks weren't necessarily qualifying for some of those reliefs. But now my understanding is some of those programs have changed, and it's no longer on the landlord to be the one that puts in the application for those rental reliefs. It's now onto the tenants. And so I think if there's room that it can be the tenant getting rent relief through some kind of a program, then I think we should be encouraging that over top of us giving concessions. And so if there's room for that to happen, then I think that should be explored before we automatically go to doing concessions. And if there's different programs out there, take advantage of it. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor C, did you have something to add or similar?
Yeah, just one quick note on that. Based on my very limited knowledge of rental spaces within municipally owned buildings, but I have been on the Parks and Rec board for almost 4 years, is that we look at it as that currently based on the rent that they're there right now, it is very, very low. And I would really like to see that we could encourage people, as Councillor Tooley said, that these are options that are available for you, but at the same source that you have had to restrict staff, you've had to restrict programming. We're not going to people to say we need to increase your rent because we need to make more revenue. So there's an equal opportunity here for us to share in both the success and the pain. And I really like, as an example, Top Shelf Sports kind of disclaimer at the bottom of their application saying, look, this is what we're asking for, but going forward, if things change, then withdraw the letter, right? Which I like, and I don't see that, although I think that some conversation may warrant the same thing with KB Sports, just to say, look, we're potentially willing to do something here, but it's not if COVID ends tomorrow and business is booming, you still don't get this rent reduction.
Thanks. Go ahead, Corley.
So just in response to Councillor Tooley's comment regarding the relief. So I don't know what's currently happening, but I know 3 or 4 months ago I was approached and the renter applies and it's a third split. So the government pays a third, the leasee would pay a third, and the renter. So the renter still applied, but we still had to be eligible. So I will look though further into additional sources.
And that was the old program. The newest one does have where it's completely on the leasee. So as Councillor Tooley. So I agree with Councillor Tooley that and it's them looking at their options now too, and they may have options now that they didn't have.
And I mean, realistically, it may be a case, sorry to interject here, but realistically, it may be a case where there may not be options available, but I at least want to see that explored and see that exhausted before maybe before the asks come to us. And, if it turns out through the due diligence that there are no options there, then yeah, we can consider it. But like I said, I want to see those options explored before we just jump.
I will touch base with Jamie from the Chamber of Commerce. I'm thinking that she probably has some of the best information, so I'll touch base with her this week and hopefully be able to get a response prior to council on Monday.
Okay. And the only suggestion I was going to make out of that is that maybe with something like this, that we did have an endpoint at the end of January, so we could reevaluate depending on where things were at, is maybe something like this one could be retroactive. So it's half the rent up to that point, and that's our endpoint. And I only say that because of the fact that the difference is, and to Councillor Beck's point was, the difference is not one size fits all with this current situation, because some of it we're restricting the building access and everything else. So it's pretty hard to have your business is doing well when you don't allow people in the lobby. So I mean, but yet you can go to a physiotherapist appointment, or you can go to Anytime Fitness. So this is a different scenario. I agree. Most policy you want, one size fits all, but this is so unique, and we are sort of building as we go. One last comment I had was at the end of the strategic plan, for the second ice surface, it has the last thing being our refusal that we got on July 16th. I would like that we add that we've also have a new application in there, just so it doesn't look like it's an area that isn't being looked at further. That's all I have. Any other ones? Final points? Okay, thank you, Corley. We'll move down to our final one, and that is Executive Assistant. Erin.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. In my Committee of the Whole report, I've outlined a few informational updates for you. You'll see there are a few Christmas-related items, and one in particular I would like to highlight is regarding the Warman Food Bank. They are accepting cash donations this year that they will use to purchase gift cards to local grocery stores. So if you are able to help them out, that'd be great. And please share that information with your circles so we can get the word out. And you'll also see that I've provided you with some background for our social media. That's the primary channel of communication we have with residents. So I just wanted to give you some details about that, as well as highlight some of the top items from recent months. So please let me know if you have any comments or questions regarding my report.
Questions to Erin? Just a quick comment from my office side. Erin's done a lot of work for me in helping me out putting together reports, and also, a jingle going on the radio station, and preparation for Great Plains College, an announcement there and things like that. So I've appreciated all the things there, and really I'm seeing the benefits of that for sure from my vantage point, having her. And again, if you have communications or you have to do a presentation on behalf of council, you can reach out to Erin for those supports. Okay, thank you. I guess if there's nothing, then that's all we have. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Ramage.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the Committee of the Whole meeting on December 7th.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Seed. All those in favor? Carry. Okay. Have a great day.